politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is The Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GBNews.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
It's 9 o'clock, you're watching GB News. A big show coming up. It's Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton, who returns in a blaze of glory on Monday. In the clash, should we ban the smacking of children? Country File, Spring Watch and the Really Wild Show TV superstar Michaela Strachan is my big question guest at 10. And are young people the biggest eco-hypocrites? And how often should you be washing your clothes? All the burning topics. But first, the news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Thanks very much, Mark. Well, these are your latest headlines. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson says he now has the opportunity to clear his name after avoiding suspension through a Commons vote. The Standards Committee had recommended a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules. He says the last 2 years have been hell. MPs voted to approve an amendment on the rules surrounding parliamentary conduct. Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has described the result as a disgrace. The British skipper caught up in the post-Brexit fishing row has been told he can leave France immediately. A French court has also ruled that the captain of the Scottish trawler does not have to pay a deposit for the release of his boat. Authorities had demanded he pay a bond of more than £120,000. The head of South Western Rail has praised the driver involved in a collision near Salisbury on Sunday, saying his actions prevented a much more serious incident. Managing Director Claire Mann says the driver, who remains in hospital, reacted correctly under the circumstances. Investigators say the train ran 220 metres past a red signal before hitting another train. The driver attempted to apply the brakes, but the wheels slipped on the tracks and the train didn't stop as it should. The UK's financial companies have been given 2 years to submit their plans to achieve net zero targets. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, told the COP26 conference they'll be checked against standards set out by green industry leaders. He says the role financial firms play will be vital in tackling climate change. Football fans have been paying their respects to former Scotland boss Walter Smith. Thousands of people gathered outside the Ibrox Stadium to see the funeral cortege. The ex-Rangers and Everton manager died last week at the age of 73. The number of migrants crossing the English Channel has topped 20,000 this year. That's double the total for the whole of 2020. Today, UK authorities rescued or intercepted over 800 people who had navigated busy shipping lanes. And Prince Charles and Leonardo DiCaprio have met at an eco-fashion collection at COP26. The two environmental campaigners viewed the designer Stella McCartney's sustainable clothes and accessories. You're right up to date now. It's back to Mark and Tonight Live.
It's Wednesday, the 3rd of November. It's Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton, who returns in a blaze of glory on Monday. Well, we've got a busy and fabulous show for you tonight. My big question guest is a legend, the former queen of kids telly, who went on to become the face of nature TV shows, including The Really Wild Show, Country File, and of course, more recently, Spring Watch and Autumn Watch. The fabulous Michaela Strachan is live at 10. Get your questions in now. In the clash, should we ban smacking outright? We will hear from both sides on that one. Royal news with top royal author Robert Jobson will be asking whether the Queen was right to speak out on climate change, and more trouble for Prince Andrew in the courts. Poor old Andy, when does it end? Our in-house body language expert, Judi James, will be looking at the body language of Joe Biden, Prince Charles and the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. On The Outsider, it'll be Brendan O'Neill from Spiked Online on why a top Monty Python star has been cancelled simply for having an opinion. And speaking of cancelled, in Uncancelled at 11, Rod Liddle joins us, of course, the Sun and Sunday Times columnist, on Emmanuel Macron's decision to back down over fishing in Britain's waters. And also, Rod's going to talk about how the three-party system within our country and within our parliament should be smashed to pieces. He'll be talking about the SDP and whether another party can actually shake up the political establishment. Plus, reacting to the big stories of the day is my amazing panel tonight. Political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality, Albi Amankona, and broadcaster and author Amy Nickel. Some big talking points tonight in our media buzz. Are young people eco-hypocrites? Is the dream of home ownership over? And how often do you wash your clothes? All of the burning issues. And as always, before the end of the show, my panel will reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackasses. We'll hear their nominations before 12. But my priority is to entertain you and inform you and stimulate you in equal measure. And for the next 3 hours, I want to get your views on the national television airwaves. So drop me a line right now. It's my personal email address, mark@gbnews.uk, and the emails come straight to my laptop. A really busy Wednesday night for you, a special show lined up. You won't want to miss a second. And remember, we don't do boring here, so let's get to work. Just when you thought the government didn't have enough control over your lives, locking you down for a year and a half, telling you which boiler to buy, which car to drive, when to go on holiday, and how much meat goes on your plate, the latest assault is on your mind. The so-called online safety bill seeks to criminalise any materials shared on the internet which may offend others, which is a hellishly dystopian idea that offends me mightily. The censorship of the population has been a growing cancer for years now, with woke institutions and corporations clamping down on free speech. But now, control of what you think and say will be at the discretion of Her Majesty's government and a meat-headed cop in a control room deciding whether your tweet is a joke, fair comment or hate. I didn't realise that all of the other crimes had stopped in this country. I didn't realise that burglaries, sexual assaults, knife crime and antisocial behaviour had been eradicated. Forgive me, I didn't get the memo. Censorship is everywhere and soon it will be law. Universities are deplatforming guest speakers whose views may expose students to uncomfortable truths or give them a different perspective. Surely the very point of university. Book publishers are hiring sensitivity readers, professionally woke editors whose job it is to read manuscripts of books, to find troubling passages and have them removed. Isn't the best bit of any book the troubling passage? As an economic liberal, I believe in fewer taxes, not more. As a political liberal, I believe in less government, not more. And as a social liberal, I believe in less law, not more. Are you telling me that our courts and our judicial system aren't already clogged up with far more pressing cases like murder and drug crime, rather than a comedian that's written a close-to-the-knuckle joke or a journalist with a lively and provocative take on the big news story of the day? I think all of these hate laws have to go. If someone stalks you, harasses you, threatens violence, or God forbid attacks you for who you are or what you've said, we have laws in place to make sure that those people are apprehended and in serious cases locked up, and rightly so. But this online safety bill is anything but safe. It's dangerous because it threatens the values and freedom which are embedded in the DNA of this country. And who the hell decides what is offensive or harmful? Are Les Dawson's comedy routines about his mother-in-law harmful? What about Rod Stewart? Is Do You Think I'm Sexy harmful? What about all of those voluptuous Renaissance paintings with the model spilling out of her dress? Are they harmful? Perhaps it's time to put Michelangelo into the dock. Britain's great success throughout its history has been its openness, its creativity, its inclusivity and its freedom. A nation of shopkeepers and entrepreneurs, Britain has always been a free market economy supercharged in the 1980s by Margaret Thatcher's economic revolution. It's been a haven for the borderline pornographic genius of D.H. Lawrence, the horrifically entertaining murder scenes in Shakespeare, the delicious unapologetic sexism of the Rolling Stones and the revolutionary zeal of the Sex Pistols. The woke takeover of our institutions, universities, the media and big corporations means that people tragically are already self-censoring. And we're currently losing the fight to preserve what this country is all about. People in the workplace, for example, are keeping quiet about their views on lockdowns, on the COVID vaccine, on Brexit or on Boris, all for fear of criticism, attack or even the fear of losing their job. Well, this self-censorship is about to become law. We stopped being physically free months ago with lockdowns, living at times in a police state, and we still face the horrific threat of COVID vaccine passports, medical apartheid, basically. With this legislation, it's another nail in the coffin for freedom. No one's got a right not to be offended. I'm a national television broadcaster, and I get plenty of attention online. Almost all positive, I'm grateful to say, but occasionally negative too. It goes with the job. I was called a Tory twat online recently. Well, two things. Firstly, I'm not a Tory. And secondly, whether I'm a twat or not is the judgment of you, my amazing audience. I get called a numpty, an idiot, dangerous, heartless, hypocritical, stupid and wrong. I get lanky fool, dickhead, plank, loser and waste of space. And my personal favourite, a recent one, curly comb over. It's all real, I promise. And each and every one of those individuals is entitled to their view. And they're entitled to say those things. Because I'm on the box every night, ranting and raving, sharing my views. Why shouldn't you have yours? I'm in the public eye, and you have to accept the gig and take the rough with the smooth. It's just simply a digital version of what people used to write on the walls of a public lavatory. Now, delightfully, most of those people who make these remarks about me and about the show are responding to the show because they're watching. And it's great to have them on board. It's a broad church, this programme. You disagreeing with me is healthy. It's what I want. I love it. Serious harassment and physical threats are a no-go. But above and beyond that, it should be all right to say what the hell you want in this supposedly free country. No one's got a right not to be offended. And if you do think that you've got a right to be offended and you want to send someone innocent to the tower for expressing a different view, you can bog off. I do hope that wasn't triggering. All my panels are amazing, but this one is extra amazing. I've got to say, it's number 11 on the amplifier. Political and royal commentator Daisy McCantry. That's a reference for the teenagers, Daisy. Also the co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality, Albi Amankona, and broadcaster and author Amy Nickel. Wonderful to have all three of you with us. Daisy, great to see you again. It's been too long.
It has.
What are your thoughts about the online safety bill? Full disclosure, I accept that it's been created in the best faith and with good intentions, but I'm really worried about how something that's harmful will actually be judged by the authorities.
I completely understand why people like you are worried, and I think, again, your worries are genuine. I do think that in the sort of in the style of Disgusted from Tunbridge Wells, something has to be done because media has moved on so much. Social media has created more problems than the current system has the capability to deal with. Whether or not this bill is the right thing to be done, but I do agree with people who say things can't stay as they are at the moment because too many people are getting abused. And it's not just being called a curly comb over, and it's not just, you know, the odd
wasn't
insult.
You, was it, Daisy? I know you're on the internet every night.
I am on the internet every night, I promise, but I rather like your hair. But it's not just those types of insults. There are much, much worse, damaging, life-threatening insults when things get really out of hand, that I think something has to be done. I'm not entirely sure this bill is the right thing.
Well, could we possibly look, Daisy, at examples? Because I would agree with you that if you receive a tweet from somebody that says, I know where you live and I'm going to kill you, for me, that's an offence and the authorities should take that very, very seriously indeed.
But if it's an anonymous one, how do they do that?
Well, for sure, and I guess we would have to have a look at that. But the bottom line is, and that might be an issue for the social media companies, but if somebody, let's say a pop star or a politician or a TV presenter, is just viciously trolled by someone that's calling them worthless and untalented, I'm not sure that you should legislate against that.
No, I understand that, but I think your first point is stronger than your second point. And I think that social media has become very dangerous, you know, the sort of Wild West, as so many keeps going, in certain pockets. And I do think those pockets need to be exposed to the daylight.
I don't know, relentless abuse online, or just switch off your computer, no?
No, but some people can't switch off their computer. I mean, particularly, let's say they are an elected politician, they have to be accessible. They have to be accessible on social media. Otherwise, they're accused of hiding behind their offices and hiding behind their gatekeepers. So I do think they need some protection. But of course, it's not just politicians or people on TV. It is ordinary people who find a pile-on has happened because they've found themselves caught up in a story, very often not of their making, and then they do become a victim of vicious trolling. And it can have huge scars and be very, very frightening. And I think they need to be protected.
I think the principle is fine, and Daisy and I can agree on that one, Albie. I'm just worried about the execution of it and the authorities interpreting what harmful might be. And we've seen social media companies interpreting what misinformation is in the course of the pandemic, and they've been called out on that on more than one occasion.
Yes, I do think the execution of it will be a concern, but I think the bill does come from a good place. You know, there have been some awful outcomes from things that have happened online. I can just think of a few now. Molly Russell, the awful racism that we saw after the Euro 2020s, you know, other extremism on social media, some of which people think inspired the killer of Sir David Amos. These are really important issues, and our current legal system is completely inequipped to deal with them. So I think it's important that the government looks at the online harms bill, but I do agree that the execution is something that we need to think about, and it needs to be executed properly.
I mean, the only way I could live with this, Amy, is if the scope for what is deemed harmful is extremely narrow indeed. The threat of death or a physical attack.
I don't think you need to jump to the assumption that it will be misused. It hasn't yet been misused. The whole idea of it is for transparency and accountability online. And you talked a lot about control. And the situation online is a media that is completely out of control. And the bill will just increase and police the area of social media by Ofcom, so it's just an extension of keeping an eye and regulating something that is massively out of control at the moment and is in massive need of regulation. And
for example, if you're a public figure, don't you accept...
No, I hate this argument, Mark. You can't say... You said this about Meghan and Harry before. Oh, because they have a lovely lifestyle, they can be like an open door to any unwarranted abuse. Like, every single week when I'm on this show, I will receive the most horrible stuff online.
Well,
and I wish
I'm sure
that there was less anonymity.
That's why we keep having you back.
I mean, yeah, just last week, you know, I got told that I shouldn't be allowed to be a mother to my son just because I said maybe overdue babies are in the womb too long.
Which was a conversation I loved. And we didn't agree.
But I want to know who sent me that. I don't want that person to be allowed to be anonymous, and I want that person to be accountable for what they're saying, just as they would if they said it to my face.
But with respect, I don't think this bill is going to end online anonymity. But a lot of this conversation seems to be hinged around talking about public figures or people who are on TV like us. And that's one thing, and I agree with you, Mark, that comes with the job that we do. But what about the ordinary people like Molly Russell, who actually died as a result of things that were posted on social media platforms like Instagram? Don't you think there should be a government response to that?
Exactly, and I looked at the statistics around this, and 95% of women who have received abuse online have felt that it impacted their mental health. This isn't really about public figures, it's about normal people and the absolute Wild West that has become social media, where you can say anything to anyone and it's having an absolutely huge impact. So, of course, it needs police.
Well, I think we can agree that this aggressive and awful abuse is terrible, and it has cost lives, and that's an unbelievable tragedy. But Daisy, I think about your career. You're the most incredible broadcast journalist, and you wouldn't want to have any of your work censored. If you wrote a punchy piece for the Sunday Times or the Telegraph about the Sussexes or about Boris Johnson or about Keir Starmer, you wouldn't want to be sort of dragged through the courts with some question about whether what you've written is harmful in some way, that the person you wrote about was triggered or upset or distressed.
No, and I think that's where some of these problems... Excuse me, I've got...
Frog in your throat.
I have got a terrible frog in my throat. Exactly. This is my throat censoring myself. Self-censorship. I wouldn't. But that's where I think that a lot of this legislation needs to be tried out and needs to be tested. We need to see where the problems are going to arise.
You've got to remember, it's still a draft at the moment. So, and also, I think that if this was about a provocative journalist, then that would be great, but it's not. And the whole thing was done in collaboration with a lot of people who had an impact on this legislation, such as they've worked with the Samaritans, because this is a massive link to suicide. Online abuse is a big factor in a lot of adolescent suicides. So this isn't really about me getting called a hippie in heels or you getting called a comb over. It's about a lot more than that. So we need to look at that as a wider picture.
I spent a fortune on this hairdo. Money
and
down
it looks lovely.
I might get Mrs. Dolan to cut it next time. What do you think about this? We've seen the situation in Scotland with hate crime laws that mean that it's possible that if you make a remark which is allegedly or perceived to be hateful in your own home, you could get arrested and in trouble. One particular commentator in Scotland suggested that the stand-up routines of Billy Connolly from back in the day would now see him face prosecution in the country of his birth. So what do we think? Does this open a free speech can of worms? Or are my panel right that ultimately we've got to do something about this nasty and dangerous online trolling? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.uk. I think you'll agree they're a fabulous panel, and they're with me for the 3 hours. Now, coming up in Crown Jewels, what should the Queen have done when it comes to her eco-messaging and COP26? Was she right to get involved? And more trouble in the courts for Prince Andrew. We will speak to top royal journalist and author Robert Jobson. And in the clash, should we ban smacking of children outright? We'll discuss that next.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Lots of emails coming in response to the monologue. Dear Mark, says Michael, thank you so much for the great monologues you've been sharing with the country. What you say highlights how poor our mainstream media has become in presenting any kind of view that opposes the narrative, whether it be COVID, climate change or critical race theory. Your most recent speech is brilliant and sharp. You highlight the extremely crucial point of how huge changes are being made to the world without any kind of democratic mandate from the people. Well, thank you, Michael. We'll be discussing that with the panel later in the show. The Tory MP Steve Baker has written about the fact that democracy is dead, or at least in severe peril. So we'll get to that conversation very, very shortly. More emails to come. mark@gbnews.uk. But folks, let's get to the clash now. This is the moment in the programme where we tackle the big stories of the day from opposing points of view. An Australian TV show called Parental Guidance has sparked a heated debate about whether it's ever right to smack your child.
Put your hand up if you ever have smacked your child. One time. That's a lot of hands up.
Any correctional method can be used in an abusive way. Time out can be used in an abusive way.
This is going to change the conversation about parenting in this country. Parenting just stretches you, doesn't it? Parenting pushes your limits, it pushes your buttons, it makes you question everything about who you thought you were.
Powerful stuff. Well, last year, Scotland became the first part of the UK to ban smacking. Opponents of the ban argued that changes would do nothing to help vulnerable children who were the victims of serious physical abuse, but could cause traumatic interventions in good families who use discipline such as a smack on the bottom or the wrist. There are currently no plans for England or Northern Ireland or Wales to follow Scotland in an outright ban, but should there be? Is this a wise intervention to protect children, or is it an example of the state sticking its nose into how we raise our children? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Jo Hemmings, a behavioural psychologist. Hello, Jo. And Dr. Stuart Wootton, a senior lecturer in sociology and criminology at Abertay University and a campaigner at the organisation Be Reasonable. Stuart, I'll come to you shortly, but let me start, if I can, with you. Jo Hemmings, why do you think that a tap on the wrist is so harmful?
I think any form of smacking, firstly, it's been shown to be ineffective as a punishment. Secondly, every single piece of evidential research would point to the fact that it can be damaging to a child. If they're frequently smacked, either in cognitive ability, in terms of their own aggression, social interaction. There's nothing, I can see nothing in terms of research at all that says a smack is ever effective in any way, but could potentially be damaging, whether it's a slap on the wrist, smack on the bottom, I don't care. It's unacceptable and archaic these days.
Jo, I'll never forget the time when my youngest son stepped out into the road, and clearly, you know, that's every parent's worst nightmare, and luckily there wasn't a car that was too close by. But he faced peril, and I deliberately and roughly manhandled him back onto the pavement. Now, I could have just gently moved him back to the pavement. I didn't. I tugged him over as a sort of physical message that what you've done there was potentially fatal, and I wanted him to remember that. Now, I would have thought that that is somewhere within the spectrum of a smack.
Yes, it is, but I 100% agree with you. I did the same to my own child once, who was feeding carpet tacks into another baby's mouth. And I grabbed him and I slapped him because I could see the danger. So it's the danger, and you react. Of course, it's fight or flight. You've got to grab your child away, and you need to remind them it's terrifying, potentially fatal behaviour. And that was the only time I ever smacked them. And I think that possibly is an understandable reaction when you're protecting your child or another child. It is a visceral response, but it doesn't work as a punishment. This is we're talking danger here. We're talking putting your child's life or another child's life in mortal danger. Of course, like your child crossing the road and not doing it. They won't forget that in a hurry. But as a general punishment, as a discipline for being naughty, it doesn't feel right at all anymore, and there is no evidence suggests anything positive about it whatsoever.
Dr. Stuart Wootton, you're a senior lecturer in sociology and criminology at Abertay. What's your view on this?
Well, I thought what Joe said there was fascinating. It's like a bag of contradictions. So every bit of research, well, she could go and read a lot of Robert Larzelia's research, which says the opposite to what she's saying, but there you go. And then I love the fact that a lot of policies and moral positions today are kind of hide behind this idea of research. But at least Jo then comes out and says it's unacceptable and archaic, which is her kind of moral position. And then she admits to smacking her own child, which means she's obviously archaic as well. So the problem with this in Scotland is that you already had a law against, you could have reasonable chastisement. But what you couldn't have was severe beating of your children and so on, where you treat children badly. So what they've done in Scotland is make that a criminal offence, or make Jo a criminal. So Jo in Scotland could be arrested. She could be seen as a child abuser. She could lose her job. And millions of other parents like her could be similar. And when you look at what parents in the public...
Stuart, I could have got reported for dragging my son back onto the pavement, roughly.
Quite possibly. So we could all... And if you asked the public in Scotland, which happened when the law was changing, 75% of the public disagreed with the idea that should be a criminal offence. Understandably, they think it's ridiculous, but it now is a criminal offence, so we can now potentially be criminalising parents who are loving, who occasionally might use light forms of chastisement, physical chastisement. And unfortunately, it's experts like Jo that are helping to push through this horrible, authoritarian, distrusting type of policy where we criminalise everything, which links back to your last item. I mean, this is the thing I'm interested in as a criminologist, the fact that essentially we are policing everyday life. I mean, I'm trying to write a book called The Criminalisation of Everything. And this is just another example of it. Every week we seem to have a new law, a new initiative, a new policy that treats people with real contempt and starts to criminalise everyday behaviour. It's a very dangerous and authoritarian situation to be in.
And it doesn't trust individuals or families, does it, Stuart? However, just to back up Jo Hemmings, you could argue that this, which we can agree is innocuous, is the thin end of the wedge. And if you have a zero-tolerance policy to any kind of assault on your child, then they are safer.
Yes,
well,
look,
not
Stuart.
necessarily safer. Sorry, I don't know who you're asking.
Jo, I just want to put that to Stuart, and I'll come straight back to you, Jo. What do you think, Stuart? Thin end of the wedge?
Well, your child wouldn't have been safer, and the child that Jo's child was playing with wouldn't have been safer. It's a very patronising zero tolerance. Basically means zero judgment. That's what it means. It's a mindless approach to people that just sees it's a really horrible, fear-filled perception of people. You know, a parent who smacks their child a bit is going to lead on to beating their children and all the rest of it. We just know that isn't true, right? We just know it's not true. And it's this unworldliness of these so-called experts, which is so phenomenal, that how anybody even listens to this so-called research, which just doesn't really connect with people's lived experience at all.
Jo Hemmings?
Well, I've seen Stuart do this before. I've seen him on TV. He's a seasoned professional, a protector of smackers. He's done this thing before with his hand many, many times. And he's come across people like me many, many times. So he's very good at this. However, he's actually showing me contempt because I'm not a so-called expert. The evidence out there is very clear for anybody to see. If you want to abuse and hurt your child, we should never have a conversation about a smacking ban, because most people with a shred of intelligence or common sense would learn to control their impulses and not smack their children. It's about the parent. It's not about the child. It's about you losing it and you disciplining your child because you can't contain your anger. It's in no way ever, you present me with the research that ever has said it is beneficial as a punishment to hit your child.
Well, Jo, I wonder if you think about where parents who are not abusive will smack their child, it might be a tap on the wrist. It might be a slap on the bottom. The bottom, by some distance, the least sensitive part of the human body, which is why I would imagine that for centuries that's where mums and dads have chosen to strike their child, because they seek no harm. Isn't ultimately the threat of a tap on the wrist something that's an important piece of toolery, a tool in the armoury of any parent? It's something that, if you keep this up, you're going to get a slap on the wrist. It's the threat of it rather than the actual execution.
Well, both are ineffective. So the truth is, what is a smack? Is it a gentle tap on the wrist, as Stuart likes to play it out? Is it a slap on the face? That's rather different to a smack on the bottom.
It's illegal.
It's physical punishment for naughtiness. Now, either you reason with your child, you talk to your child, you discipline your child. I don't think there's a place in 2021 for physical. It is an assault on your child. Stuart will laugh at me. I'm sure he will. Here goes another, neoliberal parent psychologist. There is no evidence to suggest that it works even as a punishment. It's ineffective. Cognitive abilities are effective.
Jo, I'm going to come back to Stuart in a second, but one final thought with you with the clock against us. The issue we've got, and I think the issue that Stuart Wootton has, is that this law and criminalising the tap on the wrist lets the real abusers off the hook, as cops are busy arresting innocent, loving families for, a very sort of minor, intrusion on the child, whilst the real crimes happen behind closed doors. The ultimate issue with these sorts of laws, Jo, is that the cops will be going after the wrong people.
Don't get me wrong, I do not agree with a ban. I think anybody with any common sense and any knowledge and any true love and care for their child would know that it's an ineffective punishment. It's quite damaging to a child. We should never be talking about banning it. It shouldn't even come to that.
So you think Scotland is wrong, Jo?
I do think it's wrong. I think people need to realize where we are in this day and age, and that smacking is not only cruel, abusive, it's ineffective, it's pointless. Get with 2021. It's, as I said, an archaic, ineffective form of punishing your child because of your own issues.
Well, Dr. Stuart Wootton, last words to you with the clock against us.
Well, I just think these things are not very significant. Parents who love their children, who occasionally smack them as a form of discipline, it's neither here nor there. It's really not a big deal. Unfortunately, we have professionals who are helping to undermine parental authority and making a big deal out of this. And eventually, unfortunately, with these arguments, you do lead to the criminalisation of parents where they're seen as being abusers when actually they're just trying to look after their kids and do the best they can. It's part of the politics we have at the minute, and it leads to authoritarian solutions, unfortunately.
A very enlightening conversation. My deep thanks to the behavioural psychologist, Jo Hemmings. Thank you, Jo. And my thanks to Dr. Stuart Wootton, a senior lecturer in sociology and criminology at Abertay University and a campaigner at the organisation Be Reasonable. or they don't agree. But what do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Are you a parent? Do you smack your child? Do you think it's wrong? And what about your childhood? Were you smacked as a child? And what was the impact? Do let me know your stories. Now, coming up at 10 o'clock, TV royalty, folks. Our big question guest is Michaela Strachan. Country File, Autumn Watch, Spring Watch, The Really Wild Show, The Wide Awake Club. What a career. Michaela is live at 10 o'clock. So send your questions in now via email to mark at gbnews.uk. But coming up next, we'll talk about the Queen. Was she right to get involved in Boris's green agenda? Was she right to comment on the environment? As, of course, COP26 played out in Glasgow. And more trouble in the courts for Prince Andrew. And don't forget, before the top of the hour, body language expert Judi James on the good and the great in the world of politics. See you in 2.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
Is smacking your children wrong? Should it be illegal? Well, Roland has emailed the show. Dear Mark, my parents belted the crap out of me as a child, struck the fear of God in me and my siblings. They also fed me, clothed me, loved me, provided a lovely home and taught me manners and raised me to have decent values. Get the state out of parenting. And on the issue of the online bill to tackle hate crime on the internet, it's an interesting response from, let's have a look, it's Aid. And Aid says, Dear Mark, this online bill against online hate is a Trojan horse to lead us further down the road of control, authoritarianism and cancel culture, but couched and presented as kindly, supportive and a lovely thing to do. It is anything but. The overlords in big tech, big media and the World Economic Forum, lest I forget, will be loving this. Aid, thank you so much for your thoughts. I'll get to more of your emails shortly. You know that the best bit of the show for me is when you send me an email. So keep them coming, mark at gbnews.uk. Lots more to come. We're going to be discussing in the media buzz how often you should wash your clothes. So do tell me about your laundry habits. It's going to be a hot topic later in the show. But it's that time of the week when we check in with all of the big royal stories in Crown Jewels. Earlier this week, the Queen gave a virtual opening address to the COP26 Climate Summit. In it, she highlighted her husband's passion for the environment and called on world leaders to put their words into action.
This is a duty I'm especially happy to discharge, as the impact of the environment on human progress was a subject close to the heart of my dear late husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. I remember well that in 1969 he told an academic gathering, "If the world pollution situation is not critical at the moment, it is as certain as anything can be that the situation will become increasingly intolerable within a very short time. If we fail to cope with this challenge, all the other problems will pale into insignificance."
I'm delighted to welcome royal biographer and, of course, top royal journalist as well. In fact, Prince Philip's biographer, no less. It's Robert Jobson. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Mark.
Very interesting and moving that the Queen should invoke the memory of her much-loved late husband, Prince Philip.
I think so. I mean, obviously, when researching the book on Philip that I did, Prince Philip's Century, he was, he's a founding father of the World Wildlife Fund. So, he really was ahead of his time in his thinking. Obviously, he's influenced Prince Charles and Prince William along the way. And I think it was lovely that she referred to him in that way. And he travelled the world on the Britannia, actually, most of the time, and took some incredible photographs, but researched it and wrote some very good books on the natural world that we live in.
I'm not one to criticise the Queen. I think she's a peerless member of the British establishment. I adore the lady. I won't apologise for saying that, Robert, but did it raise an eyebrow that she intervened on the environmental debates?
Well, I mean, the reality is she's, as head of state, as she's also head of the nation. And yes, people talk about not being political, but the very role itself as head of state is a political position. The only issue that she's got to avoid constitutional problems, Mark, is not to be bipartisan. And, both parties, the major parties, agree, Labour and the Conservative Party, the government, agree on the position of climate change. In fact, the Labour Party had in their manifesto in 2019 that they wanted reduction by 45% across party. Now they're coming up with this reduction of 50% by 2030. So she's not really being controversial in that respect because she's not causing a problem between the two major political parties.
Now, the judge, Robert, examining the allegation of sexual abuse by Prince Andrew, has set a target period for a trial next autumn. New York Judge Lewis Kaplan made the comments in the second hearing involving both the Duke of York and Virginia Giuffre's legal teams. He said in another era, he would have set a trial date immediately, but due to COVID precautions, it would need to be delayed until September or December 2022. So more pain for Prince Andrew. The judge's comments come just 4 days after Prince Andrew's legal team filed documents asking the judge to dismiss the case. So what do you think about this, Robert? What's going on?
Look, I think at this particular stage, Prince Andrew's lawyers are sort of moving up a gear. They were more aggressive in their stance in what they said to the court, that they refers, I think, to Virginia Giuffre's past, her sex kitten antics. I think that was part of the expression that was used in there. But it looks increasingly like that Prince Andrew's going to have to give evidence in America. And I think that, in my opinion, that'll be the best thing for him, because if he has to do that and he has to come out fighting, he has to defend himself, then, and like in the same way that he has done in terms of what his lawyers said, it's the only way he's going to have any sort of future going forward. I mean, not everybody believes what Virginia Giuffre said, but pretty much everyone believes that his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted paedophile, at the very least unwise, otherwise pretty sordid friendship. The guy was clearly, you didn't have to scratch the surface too deeply to see that this guy was a bit of a sleazebag, and what the Duke was doing with him as a friend, one can only, have speculation on. I mean, he was a very rich man. Maybe that was the motivation. But the Duke of York will now have to come out fighting. He'll have to defend himself, I think, in this, even though it's a civil case. And there'll probably be quite murky areas, because I'm sure that her lawyers are going to come up with all sorts of suggestions they haven't made already in the public and in the media. And he's going to have to come out fighting.
But based upon the timeline outlined by this US court, we've got at least another year of this, Robert.
Yeah, it makes it very difficult, Mark, for him to come back from this. Look, I think it is 661 now. I can't see there being a public role for him even after the events of this, because, you know, the mud does stick. Even if he does come out that there is now a case to answer, there's no money to pay this girl that's already been paid out before, this woman who's now 40s, who was a girl, of course, at the time. She's already been paid out once by Epstein before his death. And so I do think that there's no real way back from this for the Duke of York, apart from it'd be a personal satisfaction to win that case. But if he has to pay out damages, it's deeply damaging to the royal family. And of course, that would lead to other problems where maybe they might look towards bringing in a criminal case against him if that case is indeed lost by him.
Robert Jobson's brilliant book, Prince Philip's Century, is out now, and it's a must-read. I read it a few months ago, and what a loving portrait of a remarkable man. Robert, thank you so much. I know you'll be returning in a week's time with Dan Wootton when he's back in the hot seat. Lots more to come. In the big question, there's still time to get in touch and get your questions to Michaela Strachan, Autumn Watch, Spring Watch, Country File, The Wide Awake Club, what a career, the Queen of Kids TV, and of course, TV that celebrates the British countryside and nature. Michaela Strachan live at 10, so do get your questions in. Mark at gbnews.uk. Tweet us using the handle at GBNews. Or you can Facebook your question by searching for GB News. There's a million ways to get in touch. And after this, body language expert Judi James, who sees the truth in all public figures.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
Lots of emails reacting to tonight's monologue about the online harms bill, which I think is harmful to free speech. If you missed it, I'm delighted to say Carl and Gareth have been crafting it and editing it down, and it's now on Twitter. So go to @GBNews. You can catch up on all of the viral moments of the day here on our amazing channel. Lots of responses, though, on email. Henry has emailed. Hi, Henry. Thanks very much for your message, and thanks for watching the show. Henry says, bit by bit, line by line, day by day, month by month, our society is changing before our very eyes. Our free, liberal, democratic culture is gradually being eroded. Sad and baffling what's going on around us. On smacking, Norma says, Mark, I was smacked in primary school, but I was rarely smacked at home. But I remember those smacks. Were they effective? I'm not a thug. I never wanted to react to anyone physically. I've never even thrown a plate or a glass in anger. And I'm red-headed. I was reared at a time when parents reinforced the discipline of school, bad behaviour on buses and very minor tellings off by our local policemen. Children or even teenagers who carried knives, threw acid, dealt in drugs or mugged people did not exist. What went wrong? What a brilliant question from Norma. And as I said, I'm not afraid of lots of feedback, positive and negative. How about this from Michael? I don't think it's criticism. I think it's a sort of constructive input. Michael has emailed, hello. By the way, the email's titled Hair. Hello, what's going on with GB News Hair today? That's right, GB News Hair. Brazier looked like he just got up and you have tufts. I'm not sure what tufts are, but thank you for the feedback. Thanks for watching both myself and Colin. And of course, Colin's back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for that, Michael. You put a smile on my face. Keep them coming. It's time now to analyse the body language of the good and the great in the world of politics and showbiz in the company of our in-house body language expert, Judi James. Hi, Judi. Now, New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern shut down a press conference yesterday amid unexpected questioning. Let's take a look.
And what I'd say is that we're all actually completely on the same page when it comes to driving vaccinations and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to reach people that we need to. This is an issue of... This is an issue...
Not working in Israel.
Sir, I'm going to ask... I'm going to answer the questions of the accredited media.
Also in the UK.
Sir, I will shut down the press conference if you do not cease.
It's rude to lie.
Sorry, to our accredited members of the gallery here, we might move to an inside venue. Unfortunately, we've got someone who's disrupting your press conference today, so we might reconvene. Thank you.
The Kiwi Mussolini strikes again. Judi, your reaction. We've actually had Jacinda Ardern for the last 2 weeks now. Last week, she was proudly and smilingly announcing that apartheid is going to return to New Zealand in the form of COVID passport and a two-tier society. What's your reaction to her handling this press conference in which she didn't want to take an unsolicited question?
Yeah, I mean, for my end of it, the body language end of it, she handled it pretty well. You can see the point where she begins to get into it because she trades on this idea of being a kind leader. So she can't turn around and give them a mouthful. You can see the moment, though, where she begins to get into a state of aggressive arousal when she's not being obeyed, when she's very polite, very smiley, turns around to the guy that's heckling, and you can see she does a tongue poke, and that's a sign of disgust and rejection. She's used the finger of power and he's ignored it, so she gets the tongue poke out, and from then onwards, she bares her teeth at him. Now, it looks like a smile, but actually it's a teeth baring. She also, and I think this is a smart bit, she manages to sort of tell off the naughty boy in the class, but then she turns down and does an appeasement gesture with the good kids in the class, like she doesn't want them joining in with him, so she alienates him, as a teacher would do with a naughty kid, and then turns around to the other kids and right, we'll go inside, yeah, we'll have the jelly and the ice cream inside. So in terms of body language, she handled it quite well.
And I think you've used absolutely the right language, Judi. She treated those at the press conference like naughty children, because that's what's happened in New Zealand. It's now a semi-democracy, in my view, a once great nation made up of amazing people. Let's talk about another great nation, which is that of France. Their president, Emmanuel Macron, has thrown an epic strop after Australia, the US and the UK announced a defence deal that France was supposed to be part of. Interesting body language between Joe Biden, the president, and Emmanuel Macron. Let's take a look.
I think what happened was, to use an English phrase, what we did was clumsy. It was not done with a lot of grace. I was under the impression certain things had happened that hadn't happened. But I want to make it clear, France is an extremely valued partner.
Well, there we are. What do we make of the body language there? Was it conciliatory in body language as well as in word?
It was, I mean, Mark, this was like the body language amuse-bouche for what happened later on at COP26. They reminded me, the pair of them, like a married couple where one of them's had an affair and the other one's going to hold out, taking the high moral ground, looking for A, an apology, and B, that expensive little bit of makeup jewellery. And he did get, I mean, Macron totally got the appeasement from Biden. He not only apologised, I didn't know anything about it, he was, look at the patting going on here, but Biden in particular, because when they sat down, Macron looked very, very cold, win me over, and Biden did. He was leaning out of the chair, he was leaning across, looking very fondly at Macron, over-apologising. So much like a married couple where one of them's been rather naughty.
Judi, it's always a treat to have you on the show. I wish we had longer, but I know that you're returning in a week's time when Dan is back in the hot seat, so we look forward to that one. Of course, there'll be plenty more body language to analyse, the fabulous body language expert Judi James. Now, lots more to come. At 10 o'clock in just a couple of minutes' time, I'll be speaking to Michaela Strachan. She's had an amazing career. She started on Kids Breakfast TV. The kids were watching, and quite a few of the dads as well. Not sure why that might have been. She's also the star of The Really Wild Show. She loves nature and the British countryside. Country File was one of her shows, of course, and Autumn Watch and Spring Watch. She's just finished another series of Autumn Watch, so we'll celebrate her amazing career. Get your questions in now, mark@gbnews.uk. And also don't forget, we've got Uncancelled as well, and Rod Liddle, who thinks we need a new political party. And I couldn't agree more. Lots to come. It's 10 p.m. You're watching Tonight Live with me, Mark Dolan, in for Dan Wootton. You're watching GB News, the country's newest and brightest current affairs network. Do tell your friends, spread the word, and let's change the world together. Now, coming up, the big question, as I mentioned, with Michaela Strachan. Also, the media buzz with my fabulous panel. We've got tomorrow's front pages, and we're going to debate a lot of things, including how often you should be washing your clothes, including your bed sheets and your undies. So I want full disclosure from you, please. But first, the news headlines with Tamsin.
Thank you, Mark. Well, here are the headlines. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson says he now has the opportunity to clear his name after avoiding suspension through a Commons vote. The Standards Committee had recommended a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules. He says the last 2 years have been hell. MPs voted to approve an amendment on the rules surrounding parliamentary conduct. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has described the outcome as a corruption. The British skipper caught up in the post-Brexit fishing row has been told he can leave France immediately. A French court has also ruled that the captain of the Scottish trawler does not have to pay a deposit for the release of his boat. Authorities had demanded he pay a bond of more than £120,000. The head of South Western Rail has praised a driver involved in a collision near Salisbury on Sunday, saying his actions prevented a much more serious incident. Managing Director Claire Mann says the driver, who remains in hospital, reacted correctly under the circumstances. Investigators say the train ran 220 metres past a red signal before hitting another train. The driver attempted to apply the brakes, but the wheel slipped on the tracks and it didn't stop as it should have. The UK's financial companies have been given 2 years to submit their plans to achieve net zero targets. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, told the COP26 conference they'll be checked against standards set out by green industry leaders. He says the role financial firms play will be vital in tackling climate change. Football fans have been paying their respects to former Scotland boss Walter Smith. Thousands of people gathered outside the Ibrox Stadium to see the funeral cortege. The ex-Rangers and Everton manager died last week at the age of 73. The number of migrants crossing the English Channel has topped 20,000 this year. That's double the total for the whole of 2020. Today, UK authorities rescued or intercepted over 800 people who had navigated busy shipping lanes. And Prince Charles and Leonardo DiCaprio have met at an eco-fashion collection at COP26. The two environmental campaigners viewed the designer Stella McCartney's sustainable clothes and accessories. You're right up to date. Now it's back to Mark and Tonight Live.
Coming up shortly, my panel will react to the big stories of the day, and I've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages, which make for remarkable reading, let me tell you. Also, Rod Liddle, the Sun and Sunday Times journalist, he'll be joining us to talk about the fact that the party system in this country needs to be smashed up and we need to begin again. He wants to see a new political party, and I couldn't agree more. But now it's time for the big question, and my guest tonight has been a fixture on British TV for over 3 decades. Which is confusing because she still looks about 25. Michaela Strachan exploded onto our screens. I remember, I was there in the late 80s in my pyjamas. She presented shows like The Wide Awake Club with the legend Timmy Mallett. She was involved in Good Morning Britain. She went on to present a variety of hit shows, including The Really Wild Show, of course, which indulged her passion for wildlife and the natural environment. This theme continued on the BBC's Country File, after which she joined the team on Spring Watch and Autumn Watch, the latest series of which is out now. You can catch it on the BBC iPlayer. The most recent episode aired on Friday. Take a look.
What I found, Chris, this is out of the beaver area and it's been gnawed by our beavers. They've taken the bark off and they've eaten that and they've chewed the end. Look at that. I mean, obviously they've got incredibly sharp teeth. They'll use the bottom incisors as the cutting tool and they're at an angle, a perfect angle. But what's really interesting is they've got to keep those teeth really sharp. So every 10 minutes, they'll stop and they'll grind the bottom incisors with the top incisors to sharpen them up.
And I'm delighted to say Michaela Strachan joins me now. Hi, Michaela.
Hello.
And you seemingly never tire of the British countryside.
Well, how can you? I mean, do you know, we spend so much time, don't we, behind a desk and behind a laptop, that any opportunity that you can get out. We've just spent the whole week in Norfolk, and it's absolutely stunning. When you go to the beaches of Snettisham, and I haven't been there for a while. I mean, I was there for Spring Watch, but before that, I hadn't been back to Snettisham for such a long time, and it's just beautiful, and it makes you reappreciate just how amazing our coastline is. And at this time of the year, for autumn, you get thousands of waders coming in and migrating to our shores. And then if you're there at the right time, which is when it's high tide, you get this fantastic aerial display of all these birds going up. I mean, in particular, a bird called a knot. Hundreds of thousands on the, just swirling in the sky, and it's absolutely stunning.
And the natural landscape is never the same 2 days in a row.
Well, I don't know, yeah, I suppose if the tide goes in and out, and you've got birds on it.
You know, the light changes, doesn't it? And, you know, it just feels different to me. And I'm a very much an urban boy, but I grew up in North London and we had Hampstead Heath, and I used to go running in the Heath every day, and every time it felt different.
But I think that's the amazing thing about London, isn't it? I mean, wherever you live, you're not very far away from somewhere green, from a park or a river or something. You can get somewhere to see a little bit of wildlife.
And I think that's the point about your career and about the shows you do. It's not only the rural environment, you know, nature is everywhere.
You can find nature anywhere you look. I mean, obviously it's better if you go to somewhere wild. If you go up to the Cairngorms, you're going to see more than you would in London, probably. But yeah, you can always find wildlife if you look for it.
And actually, you know, when I'm coming home from these studios and I'll see an urban fox and I just find them, I mean, I know they're a pest. Some people call them. Some people
they
call
are
them
so not a pest.
But what they are is they're
not.
incredibly elegant animals, very sophisticated, intelligent, and just beautiful.
I think anyone that's walking through, well, I really hope most people, let's say, 95% of the population, when they see an urban fox, will smile as they see it walk across the road. Yeah. I mean, I know I do. I still get really excited when I see an urban fox.
And they're canny. I mean, they're great survivors.
Indeed,
they don't get any help from us.
I don't know, some of them do in people's gardens, I think.
Do they?
I think so. A lot of people put things out for them.
Not round in my parts. That would be frowned upon. So, I mean, are there animals, for example, that you don't like?
Oh, I think the only thing that annoys me, I mean, I see its place in the world as a mosquito, and that's about the only thing. Because, you know, I'm vegetarian, I don't eat blood, I don't expect something else to eat my blood. So yeah, I mean, they're not fun and they're not enjoyable, but they have a role to play in the world.
What about rats?
I don't mind rats. I like rats. Why wouldn't you like rats?
Talking of sophisticated, I mean, if we think that foxes are streetwise and great survivors, I mean, rats must be the greatest of all species.
Well, rats are brilliant at procreating, and they have to because they're fodder. I mean, rodents are fodder for so many other things that, you know, they have to multiply. It's like rabbits. I think the statistic is 1% of rabbits will survive because they're fodder for everything else. So that's, you know, that's the reason they multiply. And the thing is, because we've messed around with the natural balance of things, you know, if you take predators out of the ecology, then, you know, you are going to have an explosion of a certain animal. So that's why it's difficult now, and that's why people see things as a nuisance, because we've messed up with a circle of life.
Yeah, and well, I completely agree with you on that one. In terms of rats, I mean, they're so sophisticated that they're able to adapt to poison, aren't they? Over generations, they learn to tolerate poison and it doesn't kill them anymore.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You clearly know more about rats. I think you're slightly
lie.
obsessed with rats.
I had friends to kill around a while ago. And it was explained to me that some of the poisons have to, you know, they change the dosage and they change the formula because they start tolerating it. It's remarkable.
Do you know, we had rats in our roof during lockdown, and of course I won't kill a rat. I just won't kill a rat.
No.
So I have a humane trap, and they were up in the attic. They were above our bedroom, and I'll tell you, when you hear them at night above your bedroom, it sounds like there's an army of people above there.
Yeah.
And so we put these humane traps out, but of course they go in them at like 3 in the morning, and then they just gnaw to try and get out, and then you've got a rat in the trap.
It sounds like a scene out of a Stephen King novel, I've got to say.
Doesn't it? And then you've got to sort of sneak out and try and release the rat.
You have to hope there aren't any cracks in the ceiling. They start falling onto you as you sleep in the bed. Can you imagine that? The stuff of nightmares. I've got to say, I'll let you have foxes, but we'll have to part company on rats, I've got to say. Although it's funny how subjective it is, isn't it? Because, you know, we think of rats as, what a lot of people do, as ugly and you know, people find them scary. But put a fluffy tail on a rat and you've got a squirrel.
Well, some people don't like squirrels. I mean, as you can imagine...
They're pretty, aren't they? I mean, nature is unequal in that way, that it makes some creatures prettier than others.
It does indeed, and there's a real sort of catwalk, isn't there, of the creatures you like to see on the catwalk and the ones that you don't. But usually it's the ones that maybe aren't so appealing looks-wise that are way more interesting. I mean, we do a lot of things on, I don't know, we did a wasp spider recently on the show, and you look at a wasp spider and its life cycle is way more interesting than a lion. You know, what does a lion do? I mean, yes, I love seeing lions.
Sleeps most of the time.
Sleeps most of the time, goes and hunts an animal and then sleeps again, procreates, and that's, you know, that is quite a simple lifestyle. Whereas you get a lot of insects. I mean, just look at a butterfly, for instance. I mean, we all know, yes, we all know it, but it's fascinating. And I remember explaining that to someone that didn't have much of an education, so I explained it to them, and their mind was blown. They were an adult, but they'd never learnt that. And
it's like something out of science fiction.
They were blown away that a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. They were like, no.
Well, I think it's a conspiracy theory, but we'll have to disagree on that one as well. No, they are amazing, and butterflies are gratuitously beautiful.
They are indeed. And yet it's the caterpillar that does all the work. So the caterpillar does all the work, comes out, and the butterfly gets all the glory.
Who knew? Sounds like showbiz. Now,
yes.
Let's talk about... Well, I want to get into everything, but can we just talk about the fact that hopefully we're at the tail end of the pandemic? It's been really tough for everyone, including those in broadcasting, and well done for managing to still shoot your amazing, amazing shows. But I do believe you had a bit of a difficult experience in quarantine. Are you able to talk about that or not?
I don't mind at all. I had to do quarantine twice.
And I know you followed the rules and you didn't mind that, but I believe the experience was pretty...
Do you know, the first time I did it, I didn't mind, because I totally accepted that it was necessary. You know, I hadn't been vaccinated, and you have to do 11 days in the hotel quarantine in Heathrow. And then the second time I did it, I just thought, well, hang on a minute, I've been double vaccinated.
Yeah.
You know, what is the point of this? Still do it. But the price of it went up. It was extremely expensive.
This is you, by the way. This is you in quarantine, dancing.
No, but you need to play the song. Because
yeah, well, I don't know if we can do that, Tom.
Well, I mean, I can
Daryl?
sing it for you if you like.
Go for it. That's a better idea.
But it was, don't fence me in. I don't know how much I'm allowed to sing before you have to pay.
Sing all of it, you're fine. I'll pay the bills.
Don't fence me in. And that's what it felt like. I mean, it was this hideous, as you can see, it was a hideous car park.
Yeah.
And that was like your exercise yard that you were allowed out for 20 minutes a day, actually twice a day if you were lucky.
Yeah.
And then you were allowed to either walk. I mean, you have people in their pyjamas sort of walking like zombies around, or you got people like myself that just ran round. I managed 40 laps of the tiny car park in my 20 minutes at one stage.
Well, and what about the food, by the way?
Yes, what about the food? I had a bit of breakfast gate, didn't I? And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll, oh my gosh, sometimes you wish you'd never started something.
So what did they serve up? What were you given?
Do you know, some of the food was okay, but one day the breakfast came and it was a couple of slices of white bread and it was toast. Is there a picture there? Yeah, and Rice Krispies. And, you know, as I say, you pay to go in that hotel, you're forced to do it, and you were forced to pay £2,250. And I just think that that's not very good value for money.
No, I'm just looking for the protein. I can't see it.
Well, exactly. And, you know, when I complained about it on Twitter, people were saying that, you know, starving children would be grateful for that. Well, of course they would, but that's not the point. The point is value for money.
Correct.
And, you know, I like value for money. I don't even need any more than that. To be perfectly frank, I don't, you know, I'd have an apple for breakfast. But it's all about value for money, isn't it? If you're going to charge that, then, and I understand that certainly there's a lot of security involved, there's a lot of palaver involved. Don't think they make a massive amounts of money. But put it this way, I'm very, very glad I'm not going to have to do hotel quarantine again.
No, absolutely. And I think you're right to call out because, you know, you have dutifully followed the rules at all times. You're a very responsible person. But it's just the case now that there is an industry, I think, around COVID, you know, and I think we've got to be mindful of that. Some people are profiteering, and I think at some point common sense has to be
Well, and also it was very unfortunate because I came from South Africa, and there was the
you live in South Africa
I
now,
do,
right?
and there was at the time there was this so-called South African variant,
Oh, yes.
but I don't know whether it's ever been proved that it came from South Africa in the first place, because South Africa has a very, very efficient way of testing variants. It's a speciality that they have. And so, you know, they found the variant.
Yeah.
And then the country got completely penalised for finding that variant. And I saw someone interviewed on South African television, and he said, you know, you almost don't want to find a variant because then you almost get blamed for the variant.
Well, definitely it happened with the Kent variant as well, because we also have excellent labs where they diagnose these new and identify these new strains. And as you say, you know, we had the Kent variant.
People from Kent did not have to go into the hotel quarantine.
Well, probably not. Well, they found the Kent variant in South America before it was identified here in the UK, but once it's Kent, I suppose.
Yeah, and it just gets a label.
Same for South Africa. Well, look, you're here. You're in one piece. You're out of quarantine.
Yes.
You're in GBNews quarantine now.
Am I? Oh, my goodness, you're not going to let me out?
No, well, listen, you're among friends. You've got OnlyFans around here, and the food is far better. There's even wine in the green room, so seriously, you know, the sky's the limit. Let's talk about your incredible career. It did start in the 80s, which I think is mind-boggling, given your youthful demeanour. The late 80s, 87, 88, you got into TV. So what happened?
Well, I actually trained for musical theatre, and at the time I was in a musical in the West End.
Which one?
Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Which is a classic.
And I was one of the brides.
Right.
And I went back to see my jazz teacher from Arts Educational College, and she said, oh, well, how are you doing? And I said, yeah, good. What are you going to do after the musical? I said, oh, I really fancy getting into children's presenting. She said, well, did you know there's an audition and they've asked us to send people? Why don't you go? So I went for the audition for the Wide Awake Club, which was a Saturday morning children's magazine show, just for the experience, really. I didn't for 1 minute think I was going to get it. And then I got it. And in those days, there were only 4 channels. I mean, can you believe it? There were only 4 channels. So, you know, if you were watching television at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, you were either watching the test card or you were watching the Wide Awake Club. Unfortunately, most people preferred the Wide Awake Club. So you became well known very quickly. And obviously
almost overnight. I mean, I remember.
Yeah, it really was like that. And audiences were much bigger in those days for each programme because there was less telly.
Yeah, and you obviously had a great on-air chemistry with Timmy Mallett.
Well, and Tommy Boyd. Yeah.
Both brilliant broadcasters.
Brilliant, and I keep in contact with both of them, and in fact, recently I've seen both of them, which
Tommy
has been
Boyd
fantastic.
has gone on to become a sort of late-night radio legend.
Oh, I mean, he's brilliant on the radio.
He really is.
He's brilliant at leading an argument and leading it round in a circle. He's
Definitely.
really clever.
He's one of those rare broadcasters. He doesn't actually need guests. He's better without. He can just talk.
Yeah,
I've heard him just do an hour with no calls.
I can well believe it.
He's so articulate. He
Yeah.
develops an argument, as you say, and he's quite attritional and gets people wound up, which is a great skill. And then there's Timmy Mallett, who's definitely a legend in this country.
Timmy Mallett, I mean, as I say, I saw him recently and we're still really, really good friends. And of course, you know, as we've both aged, we've calmed down. But he's still great fun, and he was huge, wasn't he? I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, he was absolutely iconic. Banging people over the head with his mallet. And he was a genius, actually. He was super talented and great fun to work with.
Yeah, and I think you were just a natural. I feel like you were yourself from day one. There was no pretense, there was no caricature. You were just being yourself, I think.
I think I went into it, I was 20 years old, and I went into it, you know, like a rabbit in the headlights. And I remember my very first programme, and they said to me, right, you sit down, because it's live, obviously. They said, you sit down and you look at the camera with the red light on. And there were three of us, sort of like that. So Tommy was in the middle looking at the camera there, and there was a camera there and a camera there. So that was the one with the red light on, and I was sitting here. So I thought, right, that one's got the red light on. So it came to me, and I looked at the one with the red light on. Nobody told me that it moved. I know that sounds really stupid, but I was 20 years old. I was completely naive when it came to telly. And I think these days people are so used to filming themselves on social media that they would probably be an awful lot better on their first show than I was.
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I was there for the first, or certainly one of the early
You
shows.
do not remember the very first show, I'm sure.
I might not. I couldn't say that was your first show, but I would have been early teens. Target audience, I guess. For
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little bit older
Yeah, because I reckon our target audience is probably about 8 or 9.
Yeah, and when you were on for all those years, a lot of middle-aged men were watching. Dads were getting their kids to watch. Why would that be, Michaela?
I've no idea. Why do you think?
I don't understand. I think it's Timmy Mallett's amazing eyes.
I think it was, clearly.
And those glasses, of course. But look, I obviously you were something of a bombshell, as you still are, but I think people just liked you. I think it's really important. You're a great entertainer. And then you segued into The Really Wild Show. And that was another phenomenon, wasn't it?
Via The Hitman and Her, which was a late-night music show, which has become very iconic. And I mean, I'm still amazed how many people come up to me and go, do you remember The Hitman and Her? As if I'm going to forget it. I did it for 4 years. But, you know, it was a late-night music show. It went out at 2 in the morning. I mean, who was watching at 2 in the morning? But it appears an awful lot of people were at a certain age. Yes. Because, I mean, I reckon every week, at least a handful of people come up to me and talk about The Hitman.
Was it live?
No, it was never live. The only live ones we did was when we went to a rave. Okay. So we always used to pre-record it, and we used to start about 10 till midnight. And in those days, television was recorded on tape, and then a bike would come and it would take the tape from whatever nightclub we were in and bike it to Granada, that put it out, you know, a few hours later, 2 hours later.
You record it, what they describe it as an industry term, as live, right? So it was effectively
It was definitely as live, yeah.
And God knows how many viewers you had, but probably a lot. And similarly, the Wide Awake Club, probably watched by at least 1 million people.
Oh, no, I think it was much more in those days. I mean, I don't remember, but no, much more than 1 million.
Yeah, millions.
Millions,
The kind of ratings that TV networks would absolutely
would love now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're not doing too bad with Spring Watch and Autumn Watch as well. Tell me about making that show. A massive audience for that. Is it hard work?
Do you know, it's intense. I don't think people realise quite how much work goes into it, because particularly Spring Watch, because we're filming all the time, we've got cameras on nests. Yeah. You know, we're filming all the time, and so we have to know what's going on with those animals, and if something eats something, then that goes into the show that night. Yeah. So you have to be very on top of things, and because it's a very technical show, we have technical rehearsals, we have a dress rehearsal, so it's a long day, and sometimes you have to get your head round scientific explanation that, you know, you might never have talked about or known of before. So you've got to get your head around content quite quickly. I mean, like yourselves, you know, you're constantly getting your head around content and constantly doing a bit of research. But it's good fun. I mean, it's a great programme. What is so nice about it is our audience seem to love it. If you don't like wildlife, you don't watch it.
Correct.
So people that watch it love it. And on social media, we have very, very minimal negative comments. It's all very lovely, which is great.
And rightly so. And how about Chris Packham? Tell me about this man. How is he to work with?
Oh, I mean, I've worked with Chris for a long time, and I absolutely adore Chris. I mean, I have the biggest respect for him.
His knowledge is vast.
I mean, he must have eaten some sort of encyclopedia as a child and kept doing it, because he's got a sponge of a brain. And it is quite funny when we sit in meetings sometimes and he'll be saying, look, we did that last year. Where, you know, I can't even remember we did it. He will remember exactly what we said about it. So, yeah, he has an incredible memory for knowledge. But also he's passionate about what he does, and he campaigns all the time. Yeah. And, you know, I just have, as I say, a huge amount of admiration for him.
Yeah, well, you're brilliant together on screen. Lots of emails coming in, Michaela. Jay on Twitter asks, do you think the foreign aid budget should be redirected to animal conservation?
Gosh, I mean, I don't feel equipped to completely answer that, but obviously I'd be delighted if there was more money for conservation. I think it's obviously highly important that we do conserve. I think in this country we need to think about rewilding a lot. Yeah. We need to think, I mean, on the Watches, we're on a farm which is one of those just brilliant farms. It's called Wild Ken Hill, and it's a regenerative farm, and they're doing farming for wildlife. We need to do a lot more of that. They've got a rewilding area.
And the cattle are grass-fed, and then what they do is they fertilise and water the soil with their own waste products.
Well, yeah, and do you know what they said to me? They said that they basically don't use pesticide, which means they don't have to use fertiliser, which means that maybe they don't get as much yield, but they're not spending a fortune on pesticide and fertilisers. So actually they make as much profit.
Obviously, circle of life comes back to it, and then also the end product is probably better too, I would have thought.
Well, of course it is. It's going to be much better for you if it isn't, if it hasn't been, you know, caked with fertiliser.
And do you think that's the answer when it comes to issues around the environment? And clearly we are polluting at a rate of knots, and it's a horror show really globally. There's plastic in the oceans, concerns about our carbon emissions. But do you think that we don't want to throw the baby out the bathwater when it comes, for example, to farming? Because I wonder whether farming is sometimes the fall guy when it comes to environmental issues. And I wonder whether farming is also the solution as well as the problem.
Of course it is. Of course it's the solution. And I think we have to have a huge amount of support for farmers. I mean, I'm vegetarian, and I think we do all have to think about eating less meat going forward. I'm not saying everyone has to be vegetarian or vegan, but I think we do all have to think about reducing meat intake. And I think we have to support farmers through change and support them through doing regenerative farming. And I think, you know, rather than governments give farmers subsidies for farming in a way that's not sustainable, let's give farmers subsidies for farming in a sustainable, regenerative, rewilding way,
well,
which is what is happening.
That's fantastic. I think the Norwegians are looking at feed for cattle which produces less methane after they've digested it. And I think there are lots of interesting ideas so that, as you say, we can continue. Because what you can't have, can you, is just vast monocrop everywhere. You can't just have fields full of wheat and soy and nothing else.
You can't, and I find it fascinating how many people will go to the top of a hill and look at the view and go, look at that amazing view. And I look at some of those views and I think there's nothing amazing about that view. It's just monoculture farming. There's not a tree in sight.
And all of that requires pesticides and fertilisers, doesn't it?
Yeah, and of course, you know, we can farm in a wildlife-friendly way, and it's all about verges, it's all about, you know, making sure you've got a rewilding area, regenerative. I mean, I'm not a farmer, I'm not a specialist, I'm not going to tell a farmer how to farm, but and a lot of farmers are terribly supportive about trying to encourage wildlife back because they realise that they're going to need that wildlife. Yeah. Do you know, I was giving an award today to the Pollinating the Peak, it was called, and it was run by the Bee Conservation Trust, and they say they talk to farmers all the time, and most farmers are really keen to put some flowers back, flower meadows back, you know, for the bees, because they realise you need bees to farm. You need bees. Yeah. So, you know, you need to keep that going. So they really look forward to those people coming in and helping them.
That's right, and I share your concerns about the planet, but I think we sometimes overestimate the capacity of man to fix everything with an industrial solution, you know, whether it's chemicals or machines or, fertilisers or whatever. It's like maybe nature's got some ideas about what's necessary. And that you
need
that.
nature.
Yeah,
you need
just a bit.
I mean, you know, you need bees to pollinate your crops.
That's exactly it. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's always the message of your shows is about that respect for nature. And as you say, rewilding has got to be the name of the game going forward. Final question, a brilliant one from Debbie on Twitter, who asks, "Hi, Michaela, which animal has been your favourite to work with?"
Oh, that has to be orangutans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I've just become the patron of the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, UK, Boss UK it's called.
Brilliant.
And I did 2 series of a thing called Orangutan Diary for the BBC. And I got to be with orphaned orangutans, and it was just an amazing experience. And they are, out of all the apes, you know, they're one of the more gentle ones, most of them.
Because they have the strength of what, 4 men, potentially?
I don't know offhand, actually, but they can be
powerful
very
creatures,
and they
aren't
can be very naughty. I mean, as they get to teenage age, they're naughty, and they do things like, you know, undo your shoelaces and bite your kneecaps and things. But they're a lot more gentle than a gorilla and a chimp, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to release you from GB quarantine.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure having you.
It's been a lot more pleasurable than hotel quarantine.
Well, look, I'm glad for that. Obviously, the bar was pretty low, but let me tell you that you can catch the latest series of Autumn Watch. 4 episodes.
Just 4 episodes this year.
All right. Well, do you know what? Each one of them will be, of course, a TV classic. You can go to the BBC iPlayer to catch them. Michaela's on Twitter as well. What's your Twitter handle then? So we can see what your next deal is going to be.
I can't remember. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. But you just...
You've got people around you that answer those questions.
No, you just put in Michaela Strachan and it comes up.
There you go. Do you know what? At Michaela Strachan, there you go. Thank you. My producer Tom seems to know the answer to that worryingly quickly. Who knew? Michaela, we loved having you, and can't wait to see you back on the box really soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Brilliant. Autumn Watch is out now. Coming up, we will have all of the news making the headlines today, and tomorrow's front pages got some interesting scoops lined up for you. We'll also be asking about young people. Are they as eco-friendly as we imagine them to be? And also, how often should you be washing your laundry? It's the burning topic of the day. We'll get to that very shortly. Apparently, it's different rules for underwear and for shirts and for dresses and for bed sheets. But we'll get that explained later in the programme. Also, in The Outsider, Brendan O'Neill on why cancel culture has now become the new McCarthyism, a hot topic that won't go away by the looks of it. So lots to come. See you in 2.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News. 4 to the point.
A largely positive response to my interview with the fabulous Michaela Strachan. How wonderful and positive is Michaela? What a pleasant interview. That's from Eileen. Thank you, Eileen. I do agree. I think she's an absolute delight. What I said to her when she left is that she's the same in real life as she is on the box. And let me tell you, in this business, that's very rare indeed. However, Kathy says, well, Michaela's lovely foxes and squirrels have killed all the shrubs and flowers I've just planted. They're not friendly to bees and other insects. So there you are. Brilliant stuff. Well, it's time now for The Outsider, when we speak to top commentators about the stories shied away from elsewhere in the media. Tonight, a Monty Python star has been cancelled from a theatre project just for having an opinion. To discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Brendan O'Neill, editor of the brilliant news website Spiked Online. Hi, Brendan.
Hi, Mark. How's it going?
I'm very well. Let's talk about Terry Gilliam. Now, this guy is among the elite of British culture, isn't he? A member of Monty Python and an iconic film director.
Absolutely. Terry Gilliam is right up there at the top. He was, as you say, he was in Monty Python, who are globally well known for their innovations in comedy. And yet he finds himself a very controversial figure these days because he has supposedly incorrect opinions. So, for example, he defended Dave Chappelle, the comedian who caused a storm, by making jokes about transgenderism. Terry Gilliam has also said that he's sick of white men being blamed for every problem in the world. He even said that Me Too became a little bit of a witch hunt. In my view, these are perfectly legitimate points of view, but they cause offence to the woke set, and therefore the knives are out, and it looks like he's been cancelled from a production at the Old Vic Theatre, which I think is a real shame if people are being cancelled simply for having the supposedly wrong political views.
Well, that's right. I mean, this man's been cancelled for having an opinion. He's not broken any law. And in fact, his proposal for this production was personally approved by Stephen Sondheim, among the greatest living composers. And yet that's not good enough. Being an artistic genius is not sufficient. You've got to toe the party line. You've got to follow the prescribed woke narrative, which, by the way, Brendan, changes every day.
Exactly right. And as you say, this was a production of Into the Woods. This is a Stephen Sondheim musical. Sondheim, of course, is one of the cultural giants of the 20th century. And he approved Gilliam's production for the Old Vic. And still that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to have Terry Gilliam. It wasn't enough to have Sondheim's approval. Still, he was hounded out for having these particular views. And that's where it does become a little bit like McCarthyism, because the whole point of McCarthyism in 1950s America, particularly in Hollywood, is that you would be blacklisted, not because you were a bad film director or a bad actor, but simply because you had certain left-leaning communist views. Now, in 2020's Briton, supposedly enlightened free country, you can be blacklisted from the theatre world by the looks of things, and from the publishing world and from the arts world, if you criticize transgender politics, if you aren't sufficiently woke, if you don't bow down at the altar of gender fluidity and all the other politically correct ideas. So it's a new species of McCarthyism. It's the return of the blacklist, where people are being hounded simply for their moral and political convictions.
Now, Brendan, you know as well as I do that one of the sort of common terms around extreme political correctness is go woke, go broke. But there's another concern, which is if you're going to cancel Terry Gilliam, if you're going to cancel J.K. Rowling, Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle, the historian David Starkey, then art, history, literature is just going to get worse and worse, because if you eliminate these unique and talented voices, who wants to read any books or watch any comedians if the likes of Rowling and Chappelle aren't there?
That's right. And that's the problem with wokeness. It has no consideration at all for the importance of art, the importance of ideas, the importance of humour, all of those things, which are really things that keep us going. All of that is seen as being secondary to the importance of everyone thinking the exact same thing and agreeing with the woke narrative. They see that as the ultimate aim of society, and everything else just plays second fiddle. So they think nothing of cancelling famous authors like J.K. Rowling or hilarious comedians like Dave Chappelle. They don't mind destroying comedy, destroying culture, destroying Terry Gilliam's new production of Into the Woods, so long as it serves their cause of promoting this regressive, authoritarian, woke agenda. So there's a ruthlessness to this. And the other thing is, if they can cancel such giants as Gilliam and Rowling and others, what could they do to ordinary mortals like us? So people further down the pecking order should be worried too, because if they will come for those people, they'll come for anyone.
Well, the real horror show is that we won't know people have been cancelled because they're cancelling themselves, aren't they, Brendan? We heard recently the celebrated author Sebastian Faulks, who wrote the best-selling and award-winning Birdsong, which is an amazingly moving novel about the First World War. And he was proud of the fact that he doesn't write female characters anymore. He said he felt liberated because previously, when he's done that, he's received dog's abuse. But actually, it's bad news that a male author cannot create a female character. And it's an example of creative people censoring themselves, which is, for me, the road to hell.
Yeah, self-censorship, I think, is the key problem here. And the real issue with cancel culture is the chilling effect it has across society. So we all hear about the big, shocking stories, Terry Gilliam, J.K. Rowling, and so on. We all hear about the big, starry stories about cancellation, but we don't hear about the ones that happen lower down, or the people who, as you say, censor themselves in order to avoid cancellation. And that is happening in workplaces, that's happening in universities. If you look at Kathleen Stock, the professor at Sussex, who was hounded out simply for having gender-critical views, imagine how many academics there must be who share her views but don't want to put their head above the parapet and express themselves. So there's a lot of self-censorship going on. There's lots of chilling of open discussion and free thought. And that's the real terrible achievement of cancel culture. It really strangles debate across society, and that makes it harder for us to understand the world we live in and have free discussions about the best way forward.
And I know countless academics, medics, scientists who are afraid to speak out about COVID measures, including lockdowns and face coverings, for fear of their careers or public admonishment, even though many of those voices, esteemed voices in the scientific community, take the view that lockdowns don't work. Well, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but we ought to debate it. And sadly, those days are long gone. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, you are from the stunningly brilliant news website, spikedonline.com, which is a haven of free speech and contains the most marvellous journalism. Many thanks to Brendan O'Neill, who returns in a week's time with Dan Wootton when he's back in the hot seat. Coming up, in Uncancelled at 11, Rod Liddle, the Times and Sun columnist, will discuss the Social Democratic Party and the two-party system. Does it need breaking up? Do you feel politically homeless? Easy for you to say. Are you politically homeless? Do you think there needs to be a new party? Because I do. We'll discuss that shortly. But next in the Media Buzz, is democracy dead? From lockdown to net zero, accountability is no more. Why could that be? I'll be asking my panel. Don't go anywhere.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GBNews.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GBNews.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News, for To the Point.
Well, look, it's time now to look at which headlines are breaking and what will be in tomorrow's news in our media buzz. And let's start with tomorrow's front pages. Many thanks to the team for getting these organised. Let's start with the Metro. The sleazy way out. That's right. This, of course, is essentially a big story in the world of politics, but I think it's got implications that go beyond Parliament. And it is a respite for none other than the Conservative MP Owen Paterson. Tories shift the goalposts to block scandal MP's suspension. Boris Johnson has been accused of following in Sleaze's footsteps by tearing up Parliament's anti-corruption rules to give a Conservative MP facing suspension for lobbying cash to lobby ministers. And apparently he's been accused of breaching this rule time and time again. Or he's basically been lobbying on behalf of two firms, allegedly, that paid him £112,000, according to the Commons watchdog. However, it looks like he's had a stay of execution. Ex-minister took that money to lobby for two private firms, but has not faced full accountability. Now let's go to the Telegraph. NHS staff won't have to be jabbed this winter. Mandatory vaccines are not expected until spring, despite Christmas lockdown fears. We'll be discussing that with the positive professor, oncologist Carol Sikora, on tomorrow night's show, because it does look like your career in the NHS will be predicated on you having the jab by April. But will you need everyone jabbed at that point in the pandemic? It's a hot debate, and we will return to it tomorrow. Mortgage deals withdrawn as lenders brace for rates rise. 3 of the country's biggest lenders have pulled mortgage deals from the market and increased the cost of their loans as expectations grow that the Bank of England will put up interest rates today. Now let's have a look at The Guardian. PM accused of corruption as rules on sleaze torn up. And we'll come to more of the front pages later in the show. Still with me, my fabulous panel tonight. Political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew, of course, a former political editor on a rival network. Also, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality. It's Albi Amankona, and broadcaster and author Amy Nickel. So brilliant stuff. Now, here's a story unfolding this evening. You could call it breaking news, if you were exaggerating, because, according to The Sun, Hollyoaks star Sarah Jane Dunn has been sacked after she refused to quit the OnlyFans site. Now, let me explain that OnlyFans is a subscription site in which customers pay £5, £10, £15 a month for intimate shots and video footage of the person that they're following. It can be very lucrative. Kerry Katona told me on this programme it's made her a millionaire. I haven't ruled out starting my own page. Get my hair done first, though. Now, the star has been stripping off online for several weeks, and it prompted a warning from bosses over her conduct because of the show's young audience. But after refusing to quit the site, despite the threat of losing her 6-figure salaried job on the Channel 4 soap, she has left the show in a dispute with executives. So, OnlyFans is controversial in some people's mind, but should it be a sackable offence to make a bit of cash on the side? Amy, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm totally all for OnlyFans because the platform gives sex workers a safe environment and also a profitable and formerly unheard of protection that they wouldn't have had previously. And it's only improved the lives of sex workers. Yeah. So I think OnlyFans gets a bad press. Unfairly so.
I completely agree.
And it makes me think that
if you look at what goes on online, OnlyFans is like the Queen's garden party by comparison.
And you own your images. I sound like I'm...
Most of it... I mean, look, there is pornography on there. We should be clear about that.
Of course. The pornography that is owned by the creator.
Yeah.
So they make all the money. They have complete control over where it goes and who sees it. That's brilliant.
Hopefully recorded on their own terms as well, I would have thought.
Precisely.
Yeah. I agree. So OnlyFans, what's not to like? What about the issue? Because this isn't about whether we, close down OnlyFans. It's about whether you can be on a family soap at the same time as being
naked stripper online.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I love the fact that this actress is actually 40 years old, and I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be a younger actress.
I know, it's true.
And it makes me think that she must be
Gives us all hope.
making more money off of OnlyFans than she was off of Hollyoaks.
I do wonder about that.
So should we?
I think she decided that was a hill to die on. She wasn't going to give up the cash cow.
Exactly.
Which could be one of her services. But the truth is that I think in the end, it's about the individual deciding what they do with their career. And I think ITV are being... Oh, no, it's Channel 4, isn't it? I think they're being a little censorious, a bit judgmental here.
I'm very surprised by this news, actually. And when we were talking outside, we were comparing... Well, not comparing, we were all discussing when a teacher got found on OnlyFans and she lost her job. And I think that's very different to this. She's an actress and she's doing a different job on the side. Where's the problem?
If she was a host on CBeebies, would it be a problem?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I think it would be a
Right,
problem.
go on then.
If she was a children's television host and she was on OnlyFans, I think it's good that we can separate the two issues. There's one issue of OnlyFans and it actually improving the safety of a lot of sex workers. Agree with. There's another issue of whether or not people who are on family shows or who are children's TV presenters or who are teachers having second jobs as porn stars. And I think that's wrong. And I think it's completely within the right of an organisation like Channel 4 to say, look, if you want to be paid 120k on one of our flagship shows, you have to uphold our standards. And if they want to sack someone, then they can.
And there probably is something within her contract that will say something like, you will not do anything to bring Hollyoaks into disrepute, because we've all signed contracts to that nature. Now, she's probably arguing that this isn't bringing Hollyoaks or Channel 4 into disrepute. They're probably arguing that it is. But we all know that, you know, when you signed with GBNews, they expected a certain standard from you.
I got rid of all the OnlyFans stuff straight away. Do you know what I actually did? I sold my Speedos on eBay.
I think I bought them.
Yeah, you did. I signed it, didn't I?
I did, that's why I bought them.
To Albie with love. But you're absolutely right. You work for an organisation and therefore to a degree, you represent it.
Yeah, and now she's saying, and I really do applaud her in what she's saying in some of this, in that she wanted to take control back of those pictures that she's done for many, many years. She says she absolutely adores doing it, but she doesn't like the fact that when she does these photo shoots, whatever, she's giving control of it to somebody else who's then profiting from it. So I totally understand, from a sort of entrepreneurial point of view, I get it. But equally, I remember when I moved from the BBC to ITN.
And you became their political editor?
And I became, at that time, the chief political correspondent. Right. And then economics editor. But I remember
all the jobs you've had, I tell you.
They were furious with me because I was changing my name. Because I was getting married in the summer between leaving the BBC and going to ITN. And they were absolutely livid. They said, we have signed a contract to sign Daisy Sampson. We have not signed a contract to sign Daisy McAndrew. And I said, I told you I was getting married. It's up to me whether I change my mind or not. And they said, no, we're buying a brand. Wow. And the brand we're buying is Sampson, not McAndrew. Now, I fought it and I said, well, you can get stuffed. I want to have the same name as my kids. It's my decision. And I got a lot of criticism from feminists at the time saying it was outrageous that I was doing this, that people had burnt their bras for me not to do this. And I said, no, they burnt their bras so that I could choose.
Yes. By the way, I hope you kept the gig, did you?
I did, but it was a fact. And I got nervous. And so there's some sympathy with... I can see why she's saying... why they're saying we bought the brand, and the brand we bought isn't an only a strip
brand,
yeah, I think that's all fair, actually.
The brand of Hollyoaks is indisputably very sexy.
Right.
Literally, it's the best-looking soap, isn't it?
It's not pornography, though, is it?
But we haven't seen her pictures. I'm not a subscriber. We don't know.
Well, that's a fair point, that it's a private platform. Does that make it better, Daisy?
Well, I mean...
Because it's subscription only. It's not a public website.
I cannot believe she was surprised that they took this stance on it. And I think she's being very ballsy and brave, and she's sticking to... And I suspect she probably wanted to leave anyway, because she must have known that this was going to blow up.
And she's going to get a lot more subscribers now.
Well, and also, look at the publicity. Her OnlyFans page is getting a lot of publicity now.
If she was in Hollyoaks and they put her on the front cover of the now defunct but always cherished in my memory FHM, then would that be a problem? How different is this to being in Nuts and being in Zoo?
I think that's a really fair point. And actually, Channel 4 and ITV and the Beeb would love it if you did FHM or GQ, because that's upmarket and it's great advertising.
But she's making money from this. They don't like that.
That's the difference.
One other thought, though, is that, I mean, Hollyoaks is a popular soap, it's watched by millions.
some of those would be quite young children, I would have thought.
Are
8,
they?
9, 10-year-olds, maybe
children watch
young teenagers. What do you think, Albie? Do you think youngsters watch Hollyoaks?
I remember watching Hollyoaks as a young teenager. I remember when they had Hollyoaks Later, which was on, I think, after The Watershed. So I think the point is not that we are hating on people that do OnlyFans. I think the point is that if you are on a flagship television show for a family audience, perhaps you shouldn't be doing pornography at the same time, and it's within the organisation's right that hires you to decide whether or not you're allowed to do that.
And, of course, we know that Richard Bacon, back in the day, lost his job on Blue Peter because of allegations around the use of cocaine. So, you know, I guess it depends.
That is rather different. That is breaking a law.
You think that's black and white?
I think that's very, very different to getting your kit off to actually breaking a drugs law.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very true. And this is something of a legal minefield, so I shall make no further comments. Except to say don't take drugs. Now, Greta Thunberg claims to be the voice of the young when it comes to tackling climate change. She is a vocal proponent. You cannot say that she's not. But are young people really the eco-friendly activists they're made out to be? For example, the eco-campaigners insulate Britain, who thrive off blocking the nation's roads and disrupting the lives of many hard-working Brits, appear to be made up of middle-aged people who have retired, whereas just this summer, thousands of teenagers seemed perfectly happy dumping their tents at music festivals. In fact, Judith Woods of The Telegraph pointed out that our nation's young people are far more likely to stockpile plastic food delivery containers or spend their cash on online fast fashion. So do we think, are the young generation... I'm trying to work out who the youngest is here on the panel.
It's definitely not me.
Well, you're all very well made up, so I couldn't possibly tell. But, I mean, Albie, do you think that actually the young are rather hypocritical when it comes to the sort of green agenda?
No, I don't think the young are hypocritical when it comes to the green agenda. I don't think anyone is particularly hypocritical in the sense of
But they're the ones campaigning, but they're the ones that they buy all the technology, they buy the fast fashion, they go to Glastonbury, they dump their tent.
People have been going to Glastonbury and dumping things there for many years. And I think
they're the ones wagging their fingers saying, oh, you've got to save our planet.
What I don't like about this story is it pits the generations against each other. When actually I was sitting around the dinner table last night with my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, my sisters and my mother. Amazing. We all had a conversation about the environment and every single one of us was saying we all need to do our bit with the environment. So what I don't like about this story is that it's pitting old against young, when actually it's one of the only things in our society where there's actually a lot of alignment. There are some people who aren't necessarily pro-green as much as others, but I think it's one of the things that runs through as a lightning rod through our society, where there are a lot of people that are pro.
Although there are a lot of teenagers, I can tell you as a mother of teenagers who are massively hypocritical on this subject. I mean, I'm constantly saying, take that out of the bin, that goes in the recycling, and they're sort of shrugging their shoulders. And I'm saying, you're the ones that want to bunk off school to go on these demos about the environment, and yet you can't be bothered to put the plastic bottle in the right recycling thing. Yes. But then it's because they're kids, and a lot of kids are stupid. I mean, they just are.
They don't think about consequences.
Yes, you know, about those things. So, and that's, we all know you do get wiser with age. I mean, you can also get...
You get nicer with age and more considerate with age, because you kind of become aware that you're not immortal. So you start worrying a bit more about things.
And you worry about other people more when you're older. I mean, look at...
I just wonder whether there's a narrative that it's us older generations that have really ruined the planet, except that young people don't know about Tupperware or thermos flasks. I spoke to the Keep Britain Tidy campaign, who said one of the big problems now with plastic pollution is boxes from takeaways and disposable cups from Costa, Cafe Nero. And that's very much, or partly, the domain of the young, that this is how the young... It might not be their fault, because it's big business that have encouraged this, but that's how they consume, is through plastic.
Yes, and a lot of that only changes with fashion, actually, rather than responsibility. As something becomes very uncool, or the opposite becomes cool. So let's say with, you know, disposable water bottles, you always used to see celebrities walking around with, you know, a bottle of water. Now they're all walking around with their own reusable bottles. And so those sort of fashions then lead into behavioural changes, which is then... So rather than doing the right thing, you're just following fashion, but hopefully the fashion is the right thing to follow.
Yeah, you do wonder about that. What do you think? Is Albie right that it shouldn't be a generational battle?
I don't know. I was thinking about what Daisy said, actually, and how it is fashionable to greenwash and everything. And the thing that I always find highly ironic is when you get a company like H&M, who have one of the worst impacts on the environment with the way they produce the fashion, but yet the fashion is called, like, conscious. because it then sells more, because it appears greener, but it isn't.
Well, I agree with you. And of course, you know, we wouldn't single out H&M because all of the big fashion brands
But
are
I think they are
responsible.
particularly
Really?
bad.
You think they have a case to answer?
Yeah,
I think some of their lines are, but they do have they have brought out those if we're going to get really sucked down an H&M rabbit hole.
Do it. I don't mind a bit of an H&M chat.
But you're right. They have brought out these these more environmentally friendly lines, which are recycled fabrics and all this. And also for profit,
But also, it's just putting a positive spin on the rest of the stuff that.
Yeah, and if you look at COP26, you can see all the big businesses who are sponsoring various bits of it, and they're doing it for publicity and to appear eco-friendly.
It's a fair point. H&M, clearly, like all fashion retailers, have a case to answer when it comes to their environmental impact, although they're not here to defend themselves, and I'm sure that they would say they're doing their bit to make a difference. Either way, I quite like their chinos. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere. This is Tonight Live.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
It's 11 o'clock. You're watching Tonight Live. It's Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton, who returns on Monday at 9 o'clock. Uncancelled with the Sun and Sunday Times columnist Rod Liddle in just a moment. He thinks we need a new political party and he wants to see an end to the three-party system. I couldn't agree more. Do you feel politically homeless? We'll discuss that shortly. Plus, I've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And my panel will reveal their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And we're going to talk about how often and when to do your laundry. Big burning topic of the day. But first, here are the headlines with Tamsin.
Thank you, Mark. Well, here are the headlines this hour. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson says he now has the opportunity to clear his name after avoiding suspension through a Commons vote. The Standards Committee had recommended a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules. He says the last 2 years have been hell. MPs voted to approve an amendment on the rules surrounding parliamentary conduct. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has described the outcome as a corruption. The British skipper caught up in the post-Brexit fishing row has been told he can leave France immediately. A French court has also ruled that the captain of the Scottish trawler does not have to pay a deposit for the release of his boat. Authorities had demanded he pay a bond of more than £120,000. The UK's financial companies have been given 2 years to submit their plans to achieve net zero targets. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, told the COP26 conference they'll be checked against standards set out by green industry leaders. He says the role financial firms play will be vital in tackling climate change. Poland and Vietnam are amongst nations moving away from using major fossil fuels after COP26 talks. It's part of a UK-led statement that aims to end all investment in new coal power generation around the world. More than 40 countries have signed up. A bird flu prevention zone has been declared across Britain after a rise in detection of the disease. The chief veterinary officers of England, Wales and Scotland say all bird keepers must take action now to prevent the flu spreading to poultry and other domestic birds. Officials say the risk to the public is very low. The number of migrants crossing the English Channel has topped 20,000 this year. That's double the total for the whole of 2020. Today, UK authorities rescued or intercepted over 800 people who had navigated busy shipping lanes. Prince Charles and Leonardo DiCaprio have met at an eco-fashion collection at COP26. The two environmental campaigners view the designer Stella McCartney's sustainable clothes and accessories. Well, you're right up to date now. It's back to Mark and Tonight Live.
Well, there we are, lots to get through in the final hour of the show. We were talking about whether a soap actress should give up her OnlyFans account in order to keep her job on the soap opera Hollyoaks, which is on Channel 4. Patrick has said, Mark, we've become very Victorian when it comes to the subject of teenagers and porn. This lady should be free to make money how she chooses. And on fashion, Declan says, when I was a kid, Doc Martens were worn by skinheads. It's true. It's amazing how different outfits have managed to reinvent themselves over the years. I'm hoping eventually this tie will come back in fashion. OK, folks, it's time now for tomorrow's front pages. Thank you so much, Faye. And we're going to start with the Eye. Let's have a look at what they've got. Tories rip up Britain's anti-sleaze rules to save guilty MP. Owen Paterson caught up in a lobbying row, allegedly paid over £100,000 to lobby on behalf of a couple of firms, but he appears to have had a stay of execution in terms of any major consequences within Parliament. OK, next up, where should we go? Sun newspaper now, the current bun. Anne and Rachel's countdown meltdown. Countdown host Anne Robinson has had Rachel Riley's microphone muted as part of a toxic feud. Diva Anne, report The Sun, moaned that Rachel was being too loud whilst bantering with contestants before filming, something that would never happen here at GB News. She's also griped about her co-star turning up at the last minute. That would never happen. That's not like me at all. And she's on her phone too much. Maths whiz Rachel says she's been silenced. A TV insider said last night, it's safe to say there's no love lost. Well, when it comes to these battles, you've got to pick a side, haven't you? So whose team are you in, folks? Are you in Team Riley or Team Robinson? I've got to say, I like Anne Robinson. I think she's a bit of a legend. Amazing broadcaster, amazing journalist, and a real character. Just me. OK, next up, where should we go? Let's have the Mail now. Shameless MPs sink back into sleaze. Let's get some more detail on this story. Owen Paterson took £500,000, write the Mail newspaper, from firms that he lobbied for in an outrageous breach of rules. And yet the Commons yesterday voted to spare him and to rip up the entire standards system. And this after the expenses scandal. More sleaze dogs the House of Commons. In their comment section, the Mail say, so now we know the lengths to which a venal political class will go to protect its own. A decade since Britain seethed with rage over revelations of their greed, MPs have once again conspired to demean our democracy, hinting at a moral bankruptcy. There you go. That's going to be a very negative story for the Conservatives in the months and possibly years ahead, especially when the next election comes round. How about the Express? Warning, let's be cautious and save Christmas. COVID boosters and masks will help to protect lives and save Christmas, says Professor Jonathan Van Tam, who warned that too many people believed wrongly the pandemic was over. Now, and in 1996, a before and after photo of Gwyneth Paltrow, the actress, wearing the same outfit. 25 years on, it still suits you, Gwynny. Do you recycle your clothes? I do. I don't get rid of anything, as you can see. How about the Times? Social media sites are harmful by design, says Watchdog boss. The business model of social media companies are inherently harmful to users, according to the head of Ofcom. Dame Melanie Dawes, the chief executive of the media watchdog, said efforts to regulate tech giants had to acknowledge that companies such as Facebook and Twitter had strong incentives to continue to let users post hateful content. How right she is. COP26 vows could keep warming below 2 degrees centigrade, and Tories rebel over vote to block MP's suspension. There's the Owen Paterson story again. The Mirror, PM's flying shame, Johnson's private jet back to London for dinner with climate sceptic pals. The Independent, girl aged 4 found after 18 days missing. A fabulous good news story in Australia. We spoke to a brilliant Australian journalist about this yesterday, Sophie Ellsworth from the Australian newspaper. But great news there, and Sophie confirmed live on yesterday's show that Cleo Smith, a beautiful little girl, aged 4, was rescued by cops from a house in the Australian town of Carnarvon. And finally, always needed a bit of light relief from the Star. Captain's log. Houston, we have a problem. Astronauts told to cross their legs as Rocket Lou is out of order. Astronauts returning to Earth have been warned, whatever you do, don't boldly go on the bog after their rocket sprang a leak. And that's what I call news. Many thanks to the Star for that one. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Uncancelled, in which we tackle the dark underbelly of the news agenda. Is the Tory and Labour duopoly throttling politics in this country? One man who thinks so is William Clouston, who has served as the leader of the Social Democratic Party since 2018. Clouston believes voters have been awakened to a disconnect between political elites and the public by Brexit, and are now ready for a brand new alternative. We had him on the show recently. He spoke to Dan. Take a listen.
And I think it's true to say that in the past, the first past the post system has been protected by the duopoly, but a lot of people haven't noticed. But Labour's lost all of their seats in Scotland. And the electoral dynamics now is such that I doubt whether they can actually win a general election. What Labour is going through is a process of becoming simply a big version of the Liberal Democrats. And actually on policies and everything else, on values, they're pretty much the same. But they can't win a general election. They'll have about 200 seats. So I'll make a prediction here now, and we'll see if we're right in 8 years, 10 years' time. I think Labour is stupid enough to lose another 2 general elections, and then they'll realise that they can't win, and you'll get some sort of rainbow coalition. And by the 2030s, you will get PR. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome the brilliant broadcaster and newspaper columnist Rod Liddle. And Rod, millions of people, your readers, my viewers, feel politically homeless. And it's time, isn't it, for at least one new political party?
Yeah, well, and I think, obviously, and I would say this, William has that party. It's the Social Democratic Party. And what he says about Brexit is absolutely right. I mean, the two-party system that we have at the moment simply doesn't work. If you look at Brexit, for example, there was an overwhelming majority of MPs from both Labour and the Conservatives in favour of remaining rather than leaving the EU. There was no voice within Parliament, therefore, for the 52% of the population which actually wanted to leave the European Union. And that's true on so many other issues, particularly issues which are part of what we call the culture war. So, for example, I think William Clouston is probably the only party leader of a major party who would be prepared to say that an adult female is called a woman, you know, and she has a cervix, and someone with a cervix
even
is
Boris
called a woman.
can't bring himself to say that.
No, he can't. No, because the Conservative Party isn't really conservative.
He should know what a woman looks like.
That's a good question. Good question. But, I mean, that's it. The Conservative Party isn't really Conservative, both the parties, Labour and the Conservatives, are both liberals, as Will pointed out about the Labour Party. And so when you look at our party, which has only got, 2,000 or 3,000 members, though
Sir David was taken from
have, if you look at the policies, the support of the public. We've got the support of about 60 to 70% of the people on the issues. But, it's impossible to break through in a duopoly which is guarded so fervently by Labour and the Conservatives.
Well, that's exactly right. There is a concern, though, isn't there? Because I interviewed the new permanent leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, who I think has views which dovetail with some of those of William Clouston, and also, of course, the Reform UK party and Richard Tice. Is there a danger, Rod, that these parties will just eat each other and play into the hands of Labour and the Conservatives at any election?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I think that we don't have very much in common with UKIP. Now that we've left the European Union, I think we have pretty much nothing in common with UKIP. And similarly, we've certainly got nothing in common with all those parties which begin with RE. There's Reform, there's Reclaim, there's almost certainly a Regurgitate somewhere. And these all tend to be single-issue parties. So Lawrence Fox's party, and I agree with some of what Lawrence says, is simply about the culture war and about freedom of speech. Richard Tice is an old-fashioned Thatcherite politician, and we certainly don't support any of that. Basically, we're to the left on economics, well to the left, and on green issues, and traditionalist and conservative and communitarian on social issues. And if you look at the opinion polls, that's what apparently most people in the country are. But it's almost impossible to get those views across. It's very, very difficult indeed. We've got our conference on Saturday, this Saturday coming, and a whole bunch of very eminent people are coming to speak to us. But, in the system that we have at the moment, it's almost impossible to get cut through.
Well, let's take a listen to the aforementioned Neil Hamilton, who joined me on this show just a few days ago, Rod.
Yeah.
We know that the whole political establishment in recent years has been utterly contemptuous of the opinions of ordinary people on so many issues, not least the European Union, that we do need to have other parties breathing down the necks of those who traditionally have ruled the roost in order to make them honest. And that's what I'm going to try to do.
So how do we make change happen? Because I feel very politically homeless. Many of my viewers do, Rod. What does change look like? Is it the point at which Labour accepts that it can never form an overall majority again?
Well, I think William and you are both right about that. It cannot form a government by itself anymore. It simply cannot do that. And poor old Keir is in a cleft stick, because many of the things which have won him votes in places like central London and indeed the Cotswolds — I understand the Labour Party is very big in the Cotswolds these days, which is a change. These things which are about hyperliberalism, as the philosopher John Gray would put it, which is identitarian politics and all this rubbish, are the things which turn off all the voters they've lost in the red wall seats where I'm speaking from at the moment, in Teesside, for example, and the north of England. Yeah. So there's pretty much nothing you could do. Because, of course, the membership is also wedded. The membership is now a party of the middle class metropolitan elite. But then, so by the same token, to a degree, is the Conservative Party. Yeah. Now, there is a rump within the Conservative Party which wants nothing to do with identitarian politics. But it was under a Conservative Party that all those children were being treated at the Tavistock Clinic in London for transitioning with invasive surgery, with medical procedures. That was under a Conservative government that school children were told about the joys of transitioning. That's not Conservative, and that's a coalition, because Labour believes in that, the Lib Dems believe in that, and the Tories, by and large, believe in that. And we need someone to break this liberal consensus, which isn't remotely shared throughout the rest of the country.
Well, I think that being on the right side of the culture wars will, in the long term, be decisive, and I'm optimistic for the chances of the SDP to actually make a big contribution to the political debate. We know about go woke, go broke. Well, I think eventually it will be go woke, no vote. And lots of my viewers are really unhappy with this supposedly libertarian Prime Minister that has presided over some of the issues that you've just outlined. Let's bring my panel in on this, Rod. I've got Daisy, Albie and also Amy. Daisy, let me start with you. I mean, you've been reporting on politics for a long, long time. Do you think that things will be changing anytime soon? Do you think another party like the SDP can come in and shake things up?
Well, I've not only been reporting on it, but I've been living this story for most of my life. I don't know if Rod knows this, but my dad stood for the original SDP in the early 80s, when the original SDP was formed by the Fab Four, as they were called in those days. And, of course, one of their main planks then was calling for proportional representation, and it doesn't seem that we're much further on. And, of course, none of this is going to happen until there is some sort of PR. And I just say to Rod, apart from this scenario where the Labour Party wakes up to the fact, as you say, that it can't win a first-past-the-post election, and it starts voting in a different way if there were to be a vote in the House of Commons to change the voting reform. But even then, we know that the Conservatives would no way vote for that. So I can't see it happening.
It's very difficult. And, of course, we had a vote on the referendum, on an AV referendum, didn't we, about, what was it, 7-8 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Under David Cameron. And it was pretty decisively defeated. Because it's also, it's not just Parliament, it's also difficult to get your voice across, you know, when you're a minority party, even if you're a minority party which has vast support amongst people in the country. And, you know, it's not just the SDP. I would include the Green Party in that as well. Seriously underrepresented for the number of people who I believe agree with Green policies. So it is very, very difficult. All you can hope for is that there is some sort of coalition, that the Labour Party wakes up and sees that there has to be some sort of coalition and therefore goes towards proportional representation, which is obviously something which is wanted temporarily, at least, by the SNP, by the Liberal Democrats, by the Green Party.
But, Rod, would proportional representation and a hung parliament forever get the SDP any closer to power, or Reform UK? Ultimately, what Labour could do is simply team up with the SNP and they would have the votes stitched up in the House of Commons.
No, what it would do is it would give more airtime and coverage and more space in the papers to other parties which were not, you know, the Labour Party or the SNP. Because I think the Labour Party, I think as soon as you opened it up, it's kind of like opening a Pandora's box, in that I think the support for the Labour Party would immediately dissolve. I just think in the seats, in the places where it was set up to represent the poor people, the party which I was a member of for 37 years, proudly, because I thought it was meant to represent working class votes, simply doesn't do that anymore, and people will not vote for it anymore. And the greater number of alternatives you have to the Labour Party, the better that is. You know, whether it be those who think at the moment, I mean, all the coalition would be in the same area. The SNP, the Greens, the Lib Dems and Labour all agree, are all on one side of the culture war, and so pretty much are the Conservatives. Yeah. You know, that's the problem. That's the problem we have.
Well, Albie, you're a Conservative. Do you agree that your party has gone horribly woke?
First of all, I don't really like the word woke, but that's not the first time I've ever said that before.
How about they've adopted extreme political correctness?
No, I don't either.
Which so many of those red wall voters absolutely loathe.
Well, they all voted for us in the last general election, so I would contest that as well.
Well, I think they thought the Prime Minister was going to fight this extreme political correctness.
No, I think they voted for us because they wanted us to deliver Brexit, and that's exactly what we did. But on the point about political realignment in this country, there really is no point in having the conversation unless we're going to have a serious discussion about first past the post versus proportional representation. That's really what it's all about. We can sit here and talk about how the parties don't represent what the people want, but until that is really the point of the conversation, it's never going to happen. And me and my party are against proportional representation.
Why would your party that's got 80 seats in the House of Commons be against PR?
Because it's first past the post. It's first past the post that has got us our 80-seat majority.
Well, that's
yeah, but that's just admitting that turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
And delivered stable governments in this country for hundreds of years. Would we really want a political system like we see in Germany, where they can't even decide on who their leader's going to be?
Albie.
And it's going to take that to happen. Is that what we want in Britain? No, it's not what
I wouldn't be too complacent about those red wall seats, Albie, if I were you, mate. I think you've probably just lost half of them today. You know, I think, because that is the other thing that we're sick of. We're sick of your party's sleaze. We're sick of it. And the Conservative Party has, I think, probably made its most serious political mistake in the last 10 years today in the refusal to suspend Owen Paterson. And that will resonate everywhere you go up here in the north, where people don't get 500,000 quid to go snivelling round cabinet ministers. And I think you're a bit complacent about the red wall seats, even without Owen Paterson, because you're right. People voted Conservative partly because they loathed Jeremy Corbyn's own self-hatred of Britain. And his alliance with any terrorist organisation which loathes Britain. And they also wanted Brexit done, which Boris has indeed done. But it's a lot of those votes were people holding their noses. There are so many things in the Conservative agenda they simply don't agree with.
The Owen Paterson story is a gift for any Labour MP canvassing at the next election, Albie.
It is. I'm pretty surprised at what has happened today. It does feel a little bit like we've handed the opposition a bat with which to beat us with at the next general election. And I think the majority, a lot of people in the public will look at what's happened today and think, I'm not really sure that moving the goalposts is right when there is a rule broken. It does seem very one rule for us and another rule for them. And actually, there are a lot of Conservatives who are equally as shocked as you are, Rod, at what has happened today. Yeah. You know, I'm in many WhatsApp groups of Conservative Party members who are saying behind closed doors, I'm really surprised that this is what the government has put a three-line whip on our Conservative MPs to vote through. But 111 Conservative MPs didn't vote for the amendment tabled today. And I think we will just have to see how this story develops. But I just want to be very clear that there are many Conservatives out there who feel very uncomfortable with what has happened in the House of Commons today.
And I think, as Rod hinted, they'll be uncomfortable at many measures. Uncomfortable that seemingly a man of the people, a libertarian Prime Minister, cannot say that only women have a cervix. A government that destroys the right to demonstrate and to complain about any public policy by taking to the streets. Introducing the online safety bill, which is an attack on free speech. All of these things don't sound very Conservative to me. That's before you get to shutting down the economy and controlling people's lives for a year and a half in the name of controlling a virus. There's a long charge sheet, isn't there, Rod? Let me ask you, Amy, whether you feel politically homeless and whether you'd like to see a shake-up in the composition of the House of Commons.
Hello, Rod. How are you?
Thank you
for that. I do often say that realistically, I often feel a little bit politically homeless. But the thing that I wanted to, I kind of do and I kind of don't, but you and Mark have both said it now. And it's, you said that the Conservatives encouraged the joy of transitioning. And I just feel like that was a little bit of misinformation on your part.
Well, the Prime Minister cannot say that only women have a cervix.
Because...
Strikes me as a stranger mental block.
Are we saying...
Amy, I wish it...
Go on.
I wish it was. I wish it was overstating the case, but it is under the Conservative government that Stonewall has been allowed to put into our schools information which tells kids as young as 5 in some cases, about how some people might feel the need to transition.
Yeah.
And I had a daughter who was at a state school which was full of this utter bilge. And I can tell you that by the time she left that state school, because we got her out of it, at least 7 of her friends now wish to be known by different pronouns. And it is an affectation. It's a fashion. and it's been encouraged by a Conservative government, and it's harmful.
I disagree
it's harmful
that
to people's health.
I think it's just acknowledging a very tiny minority, and surely the job of any government and society is to protect a tiny minority.
It's not though. It's not though, Amy. I mean, that's the nice way of looking at it, but it's not. It's telling the girls, and sometimes pushing them into it, if it goes to extreme cases, that this is the route that perhaps they should follow. That if they feel unhappy in a woman's body, and you know, my daughter was a bit of a tomboy. And very outdoorsy, like playing and with boys as well. You know, a lot of people are very worried that girls in that particular bracket are being encouraged to become boys, and a lot of my lesbian friends say the same things.
I think this makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable, because it feels like when we first started educating children about same-sex relationships and people came out and said, it's encouraging it, it's bad. It's not. It's just acknowledging that it's a reality for many people and trying to encourage a bit of equality and understanding.
I thought you said it was a tiny minority.
The tiny minority of trans people in the world, but they exist. And if you say only women can have a cervix, you're denying that they exist.
Vanishing. But if you can't see that there's a political agenda there, Amy, I mean, there clearly is, you know, which is in effect the abolition of what they call bourgeois gender stereotypes. I mean, it's an absurdity. But anyway, I mean, that's not really the point of you know, the third party. I mean, if my guess is that if you talk to most voters, you know, 60 to 70% are pretty much sick of this gender obsession and the race obsession which we have at the moment. I think, and that's where I think that the new parties could actually make a difference. Obviously, the Greens can't do that because they are right at the forefront of it.
Well, look, I do wish the SDP well, and Reform UK and any other insurgent parties, because I completely agree with you, Rod, that this duopoly must be broken up. I'm delighted to say Rod Liddle returns in a week's time. Thank you so much for that, Rod. Of course, you can read Rod's brilliant columns in the Sun newspaper and the Sunday Times. Always entertaining and always refreshingly honest and to the point. So there you go, lots more to come. After this, what has Harry Styles done to be in Amy's good books? My panel will reveal their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass after this. But next in the media buzz, is there one particular environmentally bad thing that you couldn't live without? Have you got your green red lines? I've got a few, and I'll tell you those after the weather.
Hello again. Clearing skies overnight will lead to a frost in places by Thursday morning. But despite the chilly start, plenty of sunshine throughout the day for many places. Not for all, though. We've still got a northerly wind across the country, high pressure to the west, and that northerly wind continues to feed some cloud and showers into mainly coastal parts of eastern England, as well as western England and West Wales. The showers in the north of Scotland, Northern Ireland, tending to ease away overnight, and inland, clearing skies will lead to those plummeting temperatures. We're looking at temperatures dropping to 3 to 6 Celsius generally, but in sheltered parts of England, Wales and southern and central Scotland, a few degrees below freezing possible first thing Thursday. But a bright start for many, plenty of sunshine. I think sunnier skies for central and southern England compared to what we saw through Wednesday. Still some showers feeding into the North Sea coast and West Wales as well as Cornwall. But on the whole, fewer showers compared to recent days, more sunshine and more pleasant feel. But still a gusty, cold wind and temperatures a little below average for the time of year, 8 to 11 Celsius. Some cloud then spills into the north and northwest of Scotland on Thursday night. That then eventually reaches Northern Ireland and southern Scotland by midnight. With that cloud, temperatures will hold up in the north, but further south, clear skies and lighter wind will lead to a more widespread frost. Lower temperatures as well, as low as -3 Celsius, I think, in some sheltered spots first thing Friday. But you can see the clear blue skies there across much of the south on Friday, and it stays largely sunny in the south throughout much of the day. But thicker cloud feeds into the north and more especially the northwest, where there will be some light outbreaks of rain. More unsettled weather in the northwest through the weekend, drier further south and turning a little milder for all of us.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
Well, let's react to the big stories of the day with my brilliant panel tonight. Political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Can you just explain this title? Because it's very clunky. Conservatives Against Racism for Equality.
Yes, people have said it's a clunky title, but I think it's...
I agree with everything in it, but I'm just confused by the words.
What are you confused about if you
Conservatives
agree with
Against Racism...
So we're a group of conservatives who are actively anti-racist and believe that the Conservative Party should play a more active role in UK race relations, because in the past it has been a problem for the party. And we have gotten much better. If we just look at the cabinet now, we are probably the most diverse cabinet, at least in the top 4 positions in history. And we are for equality of opportunity, which is what the Level Up agenda is all about. So that is what Conservatives Against Racism
Now I know why you've got
means.
that title.
Exactly.
Clues in the title. Brilliant stuff. Well, I agree with every syllable of that. That's why it's always wonderful to have you on the show, Albie. We also have broadcaster and author Amy Nickel.
That means I wrote a book and I talk on no telly.
It means you're dead clever.
Yeah.
Maybe you should be at Oxford University, because whilst Churchill has been cancelled at his own Oxford College, they no longer do a toast to Churchill and the Queen, only to the Queen. Another is renaming itself for a Vietnamese billionaire donor. Linaka College will become Theo College, following a £155 million donation from a Vietnamese billionaire's company. Originally, the college was named after the distinguished humanist and physician Thomas Linacre, to commemorate, I'll just put my teeth back in. To commemorate, good rehearsal, glad this isn't live. He was named after the college to commemorate him as one of the great scholars of his time, which sadly I am not. The decision has been met with mixed feelings. Dr. Maria Cortha Dauda, a lecturer in French literature at Oxford University, said that college names should not be altered simply because a major gift has been made, but others think it's one of the more modern colleges, only founded in the 1960s, so there's more scope for it to change its name, especially in exchange for a massive stash of cash. What do you think about this, Albie?
I am torn on this one. On the one hand, I think the whole point of universities like Oxford, Cambridge and Durham is for tradition, and there are literally traditions at those universities that have not changed for hundreds of years. Therefore, why should we change the name of a college because someone's donated a large sum of money for it? And I completely take that point. And then on the other hand, you also think, well, this woman from Vietnam has donated £155 million to a relatively new college. It's not one of the historic old colleges that I think people would be a lot more upset about. Founded in 1962. There are other colleges at Oxford, Harris Manchester, Murray Edwards, which have changed their names after big donations, so why don't we just change it this time? So I'm torn on those two positions, to be honest.
Well, yes, and we're a global country, and perhaps it's really a vote of confidence in the UK that those want to donate to our academic institutions.
I mean, these things have been going on for centuries, where rich people, traditionally it was men, now it's men and women, so there's a bit of equality there, where rich people donate a huge amount of money and they get a wing of a museum named after them, or they get a college named after them. You know, there is a long tradition of this. That doesn't mean it doesn't still have a bit of a stink about it, because most people don't like the idea that you can buy stuff, your place in the establishment, with money. So whether that's buying a seat in the House of Lords, whether that's buying, questions to be asked in the House of Commons, whether that's seats, it all has a bit of the same air, that you're buying a position with your money rather than getting it for other reasons.
That it's for sale,
I don't think it's that. I think it's just a thank you note. You know, thanks for your money, here's the name.
Yes,
we move, we roll, we're changing the name.
I think it strikes.
So you think maybe the name maybe you could get the name for 10 years and then you get, but then you just look like a Premier League, you look like a Premier League football team where you've got different sponsors all over your shirts. It's just looking
I quite like
really
the idea
grubby.
that my son will be going to Harry Kane College, Oxford, in a few years' time.
Can he afford it?
I doubt it. There's also concern about Chinese money going into Oxbridge, for example, and some people think that this is a land grab of our academic institutions and a way of influencing the culture of this country.
And you can totally see why people would be concerned about that. There's a lot of concern that companies like Huawei have huge tentacles in a lot of our universities. The flip side of that is universities are doing amazing research. A lot of stuff is research for the greater good of humanity, and they need money to do that research. And that money, very often in a lot of technological research, is coming from organisations like Huawei. But there are committees that spend weeks and months of the year, every year, trying to do their due diligence on whose money to take and whose money not to take. And of course, a lot of people, we would talk about oligarchs' money in London and how they're sort of, whitewashing their money, in effect doing laundering their money by buying businesses in London and becoming members of the establishment. It always comes back to wanting to get that air of authority or acceptance, and it's a real headache for a lot of people when they're on the other end, whether to accept this money or not. I'm glad I'm not one of those people.
Well, yes, and we've seen, for example, Saudi billionaires investing in Newcastle United. I know the fans up there are really delighted about it. I mean, the bottom line is Britain has always been a location for international investment. It's just how our economy works, and I think it very much fits with our history as well.
And a lot of people would say that we've been very lax in the past, particularly with things like Russian money, in really keeping an eye on how that money was made, whether it actually genuinely belonged to that person who seemed to have it, and whether our houses in London or whether businesses in the city and all the rest of it should be being used in that way. It's a very, very tricky area. Now, I'm sure that Oxford and all the other universities are trying to do their due diligence, but a lot of these people are very clever at covering up where their money's come from.
And you have to wonder what motivates these donations, Albie.
But I would just say, on the issue of this Vietnamese billionaire who has donated £155 million into this college in Oxford, she's one of the first self-made billionaires in the world. I think she made a lot of her money in the airline industry. This is not dirty money. I wouldn't want the viewers to think that we're sort of conflating the issue of dirty money with this lady's investment into this college in Oxford.
How did she get so rich? I want specifics, because when you hear that amount of money, you think, how did you get that rich? Like, maybe, what was it?
By having a successful company. Do you ask why Rihanna's a billionaire?
No, as in, I'm genuinely just interested in how she
Yeah.
came to get that much money.
Are you one of those people that thinks if someone has become a billionaire, some of it has to be a bit dodgy?
No, not at all.
A lot of people think that.
I
They
just
do.
need a bit of inspiration, I haven't got any money.
Start an airline, I think.
but that is an interesting point, because, of course, a lot of people do think exactly that. They'll look at internet billionaires or technology billionaires or Russian billionaires, whatever they be, and there'll be some suspicion, which of course is where that great tradition of giving your money away, which is exactly what she's doing, comes from, being a philanthropist. And that's actually something that British millionaires and billionaires are not very good at. If you look at the sort of scale of where the biggest philanthropists come from, it's very, very fashionable in America. British billionaires and millionaires tend to keep a lot more of it than other ones do. So, I mean, that is the flip side. And, hooray for the philanthropists because we need them.
Definitely. Definitely American billionaires and millionaires have a long tradition of philanthropy. Long may it continue. Well, let's talk about the environment because wet wipes, the Swiss army knife of cosmetics, are under threat. Whether you're a parent wiping a child's nose or bum, or removing last night's makeup from a big party, or perhaps if you've run out of loo roll, you can always rely on a wet wipe. But a new bill proposed by Fleur Anderson, MP for Putney, has just cleared its first hurdle, and it could ban 90% of wet wipes sold in the UK as they contain microplastics. And we, the British public, chuck away 11 billion wet wipes a year. So we all want to do our bit to combat climate change and clean up the planet. But for some people, there are certain things that we just can't do without. So what's the one thing that you won't give up for the cause? Wet wipes, holidays abroad, meet, let me know, mark@gbnews.uk. Well, a big debate has heated up on Facebook, obviously. An Australian Facebook group has caused controversy surrounding a debate about washing your activewear after each use. We'll come to that shortly, but let's talk about wet wipes first. You are a relatively new mum.
No, I'm not. He's 8.
Is he 8? Blimey.
You've been saying that for 8 years. It really does.
8-year-old, that's a baby compared to my 16 and 12-year-olds. Could you live without the wet wipes?
Yeah, I'm not into wet wipes. They're really bad for your skin. I don't like them at all. And I once had to do a big feature on fatbergs, and they're mainly made up from people flushing wet wipes. So I agree with this.
Because they're not like paper, like toilet roll, which disintegrates, doesn't it?
I think they're made of. They've got a lot of plastic in them, so they don't.
But they don't have to have plastic in them. So a lot of them do. I mean, I have to say that the wet wipe, or the face wipe, the wipe that takes the makeup off, is my guilty secret, and I get roundly and properly criticised for it. But I'm so tired and lazy at the end of the day, I can't be bothered with all this business. But anyway, I agree with this law, because I think if you ban all the ones with plastic in them, and then you can only buy ones that aren't really bad for the environment, that is the way of technology taking over and creating a less damaging environment.
Are they made of cotton predominantly?
It's like a stretchy material that's sort of elastic, and that's where the plastic comes into it, because they're stretchy.
Yes. I mean, I do wonder, do you have... so that is your environmental red line, because I think we can all agree that we want to do our bit for the planet. And so, for example, Mrs. Dolan and I are having a bit of an experiment this year, which is we're going to leave the central heating on for as long... Sorry, off. We leave it off for as long as possible. So, at the moment, the house is freezing, and you just put on another jumper, maybe a hat. And so far, so good. So I'm willing to do that.
But do you know what? I looked up the most environmentally unfriendly thing you can do in preparation for this segment, and it's have another child.
Oh, yeah.
Out of all the things. And, I want to have 10 children.
Right.
So I'm a hypocrite.
No, you're so right.
I'm a broody hypocrite.
But then
humans are the problem.
So people do say that, but then we know that there's a demographic time bomb, which is ticking away and really, really bad. So, yes, you might not be doing something good for the environment, but you would be doing something good for the planet. You'd be doing something good for pensioners who need younger people to pay taxes. So it's quite one-sided.
I'm willing to walk more places. I'm willing to take fewer flights. So, for example, I don't mind getting the train up to Edinburgh rather than flying. In fact, I generally always do prefer the train because there's less hassle.
Yeah, I prefer
I've got a few red lines. I have a 125 moped. Now, I guess at some point I will hopefully have an electric moped.
Does that mean that you've never passed your test?
Yeah, I've got an L plate. I look like a delivery driver.
You can come on the back of my motorbike. I passed my test many years ago.
What an invitation.
More than 20 years ago.
I will ride pillion with the
There is
mechanic.
something really hot about a woman driving a motorbike. That's quite an image.
I did once I had babies, I had to give up the motorbikes. But I like to sneer on men that have to drive around without plates. It makes me feel smug.
My machine is a complete hairdryer on wheels. But I mean, eventually I'll move over to electric, but they're quite expensive. There are practical issues as well. So I'll hang on to my 125 for now. I'm afraid
actually, I drive a hybrid, so I can have the extra baby.
There you go.
Yeah.
That'll do it nicely.
Good. I've offset.
Also, we have. I mean, there's a couple of other things: meat and fish, and dairy. You know, I went low carb 3 years ago, and what it means is eating, lots of like vegetables and things, but also animal protein.
A lot of meat.
Yeah. So I really don't want to go on those soya burgers. But those are my red lines. There's one other little guilty pleasure: the tumble dryer.
I love a good tumble dryer.
I loved, yeah.
Now, see, I'm not allowed. Like you, I live with a laundry Nazi.
Yes.
And part of his fascism is that the tumble dryer is totally out of bounds because he likes crunchy towels. You know how towels, which are lovely and fluffy, come out of the tumble dryer? No, we have to have crispy, crunchy ones.
Right, because they're more absorbent when they're crunchy.
It's horrible. I don't understand that. Anyway.
You can dry yourself quicker with a crunchy towel, I would say. Definitely.
There you go. You see, it's a boy thing.
It is a boy thing.
But my compromise with tumble dryer is I take out heavy, big stuff like towels.
Yeah.
And it's just the smalls that you can just put. But look, while we're on laundry, this is a very important issue because, as I mentioned there, and we'll cover this quickly, an Australian Facebook group has got itself in something of a bit of a tizzy about this. It's a debate about washing your activewear after each use. It raises the important question of what is an acceptable amount of time before you wash your clothes. So what's the deal? Is it underpants daily? T-shirts every other day? Jeans never? What are the rules about which items of clothes get washed when?
But firstly, this group is absolutely right. It's revolting to go to the gym and get all sweaty and then wear that stuff again the next day. And also, it's really, really bad for you. I once researched this. It gives you really bad spots if you do that, because it's full of ick. The nylon that the clothes are made of.
So polyester and man-made fibres house bacteria.
Yes. And if you've been, exercising, that is what they were up in arms about. But other things, no, I mean, who would wash their jeans every time? That's crazy talk.
Well, Anderson
Woolly jumpers?
the
Mad.
highly respected American news presenter, got himself in hot water when he declared that he never washes his jeans.
I don't think I do.
No, and he said you're not supposed to.
No, you're not.
But they get smelly.
Well,
No,
my
but denim
producer
was
Cal
made.
said he had expensive jeans once, and he didn't wash them, and then they got muddy. Who knows how and why? He's a very exotic character. But he washed them, and he couldn't wear them ever again.
What, so cowboys who originally wore jeans never washed?
No,
well, maybe they did.
That's literally why they made it, because it was really durable and hard wearing, and you don't have to wash it, and it gets better the more you wear it. Like the more.
I think in
Or is that
2021,
leather, actually?
you wash your jeans a bit more often than when they're
I don't
cowboy.
wash my jeans.
I think they get better with age, and they get better with dirt.
I need to ask you another tumble dryer question.
Go.
This is really, I'm now right in my stride on the laundry thing. Do you agree with my other half that if you put stuff in the tumble dryer, it turns them grey? If you put white stuff in the tumble dryer, that's one of his main reasons he's so anti-tumble. Because he says you put white stuff in and it comes out grey. I'm like, how's that possible? That can't even happen.
Well, I guess there is fluff in the machine when you use the tumble dryer. And so I suppose that dust could embed itself in the fibres. I also don't think it's great for the fibres because the hot air is possibly causing, cotton shirts and things to bobble.
I can hear TVs across the nation being turned off. I'm panicking.
We better get back to let's go back to OnlyFans. But yeah, I think for me the tumble dryer is it's for the clothes that are just a hassle to dry individually. So socks and underpants and stuff like that. So we can agree.
But do you lose
I think it's more for sheets and towels, tumble dryers. Like big items that are harder to dry.
Difficult to
or find space to put them.
Hang all over
when you can't hang them on the washing line.
What's the deal with your smalls? Because I wash my underwear after every use.
Yes.
But I must say that when I was a kid, I probably got a few days out of each pair of underpants.
Can I tell you something that I do sometimes, which is disgusting, and I might regret saying this?
Do it.
Turning them inside out.
Turn them inside out. So
back in the day, or is this a recent?
But I'm quite forgetful, and I'm not always that organised with my washing. So I know.
That is student, that is student behaviour.
Today, or are they clean?
Well, today I haven't got any because I didn't.
Suddenly our audience is growing again.
And we're getting the OnlyFans.
Oh my God.
Fans
I'll
only.
be having a look at the male demographic of our audience tomorrow night. There appears to be a spike after 11. You're looking very clean today, Albie.
I am clean.
You're looking
Thank
pressed
you.
and laundered.
Yes, pressed and laundered. Although not money laundered, just laundry laundered.
What you can do with your shirts, by the way, a bit of a life hack, is you can use the iron on the armpits and just give it a blast and it kills the bacteria.
And hair straighteners.
Because the only smelly bit of the shirt... Oh, that's good to know. The only smelly bit of the shirt is mainly under the arm, isn't it? So just give it a blast with a steam iron and that will kill the bugs. That's why it smells. But the other great tip is wool. Because wool does not need to be washed ever. It's a natural fibre. All it has to do is air.
I had no idea you were such an expert
No,
in
I'm
this
obsessed
area.
with this stuff. If you've got a smelly jumper, just
hang it up.
Yeah, and let it air, and it will be clean. So merino wool, and the reason why it's natural fibre, so it's
Little squirt of Febreze.
a bit of the jumper and a bit on your neck as well. The chicks love it.
Also, do you know if you've got smelly dishcloths, put them in the microwave.
Now, if that's not a euphemism, nothing is. So it's time now for this. Yes, we are going to do our greatest union, Jackass, and greatest Britain. So excited about this. After a short break, we're going to pay the rent. I'll see you in 2.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News, for To the Point.
It's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass with my fabulous panel, Daisy McAndrew, Albie Amoncona and Amy Nickel. Daisy, clock's against us. Who's your greatest Britain?
My greatest Britons are the Royal Marines, who, I don't know if you've been reading about this has just come out today. They've been doing this amazing 5-day war games in the Californian desert against their American contemporaries. And guess who won?
Boom.
Yay!
What a great
and
combination.
This is a big thing for me because I come from Royal Marine family. My grandfather was a Major General in the Marines. So
Amazingly skilled.
Go the Royal Marines.
Amazingly courageous and you know, just have such a great legacy for this country. What a great shout. Albie, how about you, your greatest Britain?
My greatest Britons are all of the volunteers at the Royal British Legion. We've all got our poppies on this evening.
Nice.
And I brought another one today. And I guess this is just a call for Britain to go out and buy your poppies when you see one. and donate to the great cause.
Make sure you've got £1 on you or 50p because we're a bit
They take
cashless.
cards now. They
Do
take cards. I bought mine with a card
Glad
today.
to hear it. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, look, I like the military theme and I completely agree. How about you, Amy? Your greatest Briton?
Well, it's another soldier. It's a man that strikes me as somebody who washes their underpants very regularly. It's Harry Styles. Because he had a phenomenal Halloween outfit that I suggest you... Oh, we haven't got it.
Yeah.
There he is. So he's Dorothy, ruby slippers, complete with, and he just looks amazing in anything. So in honour of Harry, I wore my turquoise ruby... Well,
I
not
wonder
ruby,
if we can get a shot
my
of those.
sparkly
Absolutely
slippers.
marvellous. Yeah, we can see those and they're
Just pay
very, very
tribute
fancy
to
indeed.
that moment in time.
Oh, look, we're zooming in.
Oh no, because last time this happened, I got put
It's
on
a
a
male
weird foot
cameraman, you
website.
can never guess.
No, I got put on Wikipedia.
Lower,
feed.
Daryl, lower, please. It's a family show.
Yeah. Oh no, my rubbish tattoo showing. Yeah,
Well,
there
look,
they are.
the clock was against us, but we had to focus on Amy's body for a while. OK, well, look, let's briefly now hit your union jackass. Who have you got?
My union jackass, I'm afraid, is the police in Glasgow doing COP26 security, who changed the route of some of the cavalcades of the dignitaries. And as a result, a lot of men and women, but particularly women, had to walk an hour out of their way to get back to their homes or hotels through an unlit park, putting themselves in danger.
Disgraceful.
So I'm very annoyed about that.
That's a really great shout. Albie, couple of seconds. Who have you got?
The Yorkshire County Cricket Club, because of the awful things they said about... Apparently, it's just banter to call someone from Pakistan the P word.
And absolutely, it's a
outrageous.
horrific story. And very briefly, Amy, your
Smart
union jackass?
motorways, because they're not
Oh,
smart,
yeah.
they're stupid.
Do you know what? I agree with every syllable from all of you. I really want to thank my amazing team for working so hard today and putting together a wonderful show. But most importantly, to my panel and to you at home, it's been wonderful to have your company. And I'll see you tomorrow night at 9. Can't wait for it. Keep it GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News, for To the Point.
Tonight on Farage, no jab, no job. That's what 1.2 million NHS workers are about to be told. We go back into the English Channel. Madness today. Huge numbers arriving. Lifeboats still out searching for migrant boats in the pitch black. We'll go to America, where, as I predicted on this show for the last two evenings, the Republicans have won the governorship of the state of Virginia. And joining me on Talking Pints, musical impresario Pete Waterman.
I'm Tamsin Roberts, and these are your latest headlines. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson says he now has the opportunity to clear his name after avoiding suspension through a Commons vote. The Standards Committee had recommended a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules. He says the last 2 years have been hell. MPs voted to approve an amendment on the rules surrounding parliamentary conduct. Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has described the result as a disgrace. The British skipper caught up in the post-Brexit fishing row has been told he can leave France immediately. A French court has also ruled that the captain of the Scottish trawler does not have to pay a deposit for the release of his boat. Authorities had demanded he pay a bond of more than £120,000. The head of South Western Rail has praised the driver involved in a collision near Salisbury on Sunday, saying his actions prevented a much more serious incident. Managing Director Claire Mann says the driver, who remained in hospital, reacted correctly under the circumstances. Investigators say the train ran 220 metres past a red signal before hitting another train. The driver attempted to apply the brakes, but the wheels slipped on the tracks and the train didn't stop as it should. The UK's financial companies have been given 2 years to submit their plans to achieve net zero targets. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, told the COP26 conference they'll be checked against standards set out by green industry leaders. He says the role financial firms play will be vital in tackling climate change. The number of migrants crossing the English Channel has topped 20,000 this year. That's double the total for the whole of 2020. Yesterday, UK authorities rescued or intercepted 456 people who had navigated busy shipping lanes travelling from France in small boats. Football fans have been paying their respects to former people gathered outside the Ibrox Stadium to see the funeral cortege. The ex-Rangers and Everton manager died last week, 73. Spain has cancelled all flights to and from the island of La Palma because of heavy ash from an erupting volcano. Authorities on the Canary Island are telling people who live near it to stay indoors. They've also halted school classes. The volcano has been spewing lava, ash and gases for more than 6 weeks, and more than 7,000 people have been evacuated from their homes. Well, that's your news update. Now, let's get back to Farage.
Last week, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said he was leaning towards vaccinations being compulsory for all NHS staff. And I said to you when this